I'm mid-conversation with old Gareth, my grizzled knight uncle who looks like he chews nails for breakfast, when bang, something explodes outside. We both whip around to the window. Carl, my so-called sniper squad captain, just blew a fist-sized hole through a wooden target from 50 paces. Cool, right? Except he's standing there fumbling with the rifle like a toddler who found dad's crossbow. Real confidence-inspiring stuff. Gareth squints at the smoking wreckage and goes, "So that's your new invention?" I sigh. "It's called a sniper rifle. And apparently our top marksman needs to practice not looking like an idiot." The old man actually laughs, which is rare enough to mark on a calendar, and asks if I basically want him to babysit the recruits so Carl can keep playing with his shiny toy. I mean, yes, but also no. I tell him once the craftsmen figure out mass production, this weapon changes everything. Carl's little squad will become every enemy's worst nightmare. Gareth goes full knight mode, fist to chest. Yes, sir. Love that guy. Then I pull out my map and point to the real reason I called him in. There's a bandit gang called the Blood Wolves, about 50 psychos camped right on top of our trade route to the Northern Wind Fortress. You know, the route I just set up a salt deal on with the Fourth Prince? Yeah, these guys gotta go. Gareth grins like a wolf himself. Perfect. Time to let the rookies see some blood. He's terrifying, and I love it. After he leaves, I watch Carl teaching old soldiers how to use rifles in the courtyard. The sunset stretches their shadows across the stone wall like some ancient mural. Poetic moment. I allowed myself 3 seconds of feelings before moving on. 3 days later, I'm up on the East Tower at dawn, fog rolling over my fields like something out of a painting. Anderson, my new butler, reports a caravan spotted 5 miles out. I tell him to get hot food and ale ready. Hospitality matters. And to fetch Morris, my overworked administrator. Poor Morris looks like he hasn't slept since I was born. Dark circles so deep you could store grain in them. He mumbles something about tax reports and irrigation paperwork. I feel a tiny bit guilty. Tiny. Good news, I tell him. The caravan's bringing you reinforcements, accountants, scholars, former officials. His eyes light up like a kid on his birthday, then immediately go suspicious. Can we trust outsiders with sensitive information? I laugh. Relax. They're all from the Blackrock family. Now here's the funny part. I'm technically not a Blackrock anymore. Got kicked out of the inheritance line because I didn't awaken the special Blackrock blood or whatever. But my old family isn't stupid. They see me turning this dusty territory into a gold mine and suddenly want to be best friends again. These helpers are basically their investment in me. Smart move, honestly. I do the same. I assure Morris these people will only handle basic paperwork while he keeps all the real power. He finally relaxes. Things have been growing too fast for these old bones, he admits. Yeah, no kidding, Morris. Please don't die on me. Then the Blackrock caravan rolls in. Fancy carriages, guards in matching leather armor, the whole show-off package. And out steps my brother William, staring at my territory like I just showed him a dragon doing taxes. Ron, I can't believe how far you've developed this place. You were definitely holding back when you ran the family business. I smirk. William, the fact that you can't see through basic strategy is exactly why Father put me in charge of commerce. He bear hugs me, the big oaf, and tells me he's now my permanent family liaison. Basically, Father sent his own son to kiss up to me. The irony is delicious. Then William gets all serious and emotional. Nobody in the family thinks of you as a cast-off, Ron. The Blackrock blood awakening thing is a kingdom law, not our choice. If it were up to the elders, you'd be the heir. Sweet sentiment. Also completely useless information. I shut it down with a shrug. Can't control blood magic, William. Besides, I like it out here. Nobody tells me what to do, and I get to invent guns. Win-win. He tries to keep going with the feelings, but I cut him off. Enough drama. Where are the people I requested? My administrator over there looks like he's about to collapse, and I'd rather not explain to his nephew how I worked his uncle to death. Morris was standing nearby, practically vibrating with excitement, when William called over the new recruits. 20-something people lined up in front of me. Neat robes, respectful faces, the whole professional package. William started the introductions like a game show host. This is Edwin, 10 years as a tax official in Blackrock City. Some serious-looking guy with salt and pepper hair who probably dreams about spreadsheets. And this is Alan, only 20 years old but already fluent in 3 kingdom dialects and mathematics. A young hotshot. Nice. I handed the whole bunch over to Morris, told him to ease them in slowly. He bowed so fast I thought his back might snap. Poor guy was one all-nighter away from becoming a ghost. Then I brought William inside for tea. The reception hall looked gorgeous, sunlight pouring through stained glass, silver tea set gleaming on oak, the works. I personally poured him a cup of snow pine tea with honey, a northern specialty. He sniffed it, took a sip, and his eyebrows shot up. This rivals the spiced teas in the capital, I shrugged coolly. The wasteland has its perks. Then I cut the small talk. So William, besides delivering my staff, what did Father actually send you here for? His face went serious real fast. The Earl wants to strengthen trade between our territories. Specifically, those wasteland horses you mentioned. Huh? So Father wants to build up his military. I tapped my teacup. Things in the kingdom are that bad. William checked the room for eavesdroppers, then dropped his voice. The first prince is moving royal troops around. The second prince is secretly recruiting Eastern Earls. And the king's health isn't looking great. Fantastic. Royal succession drama. My favorite genre of things that get people killed. I drummed my fingers on the table. So Father wants to prepare early? Exactly. The Blackrock family can't stay neutral if a throne war breaks out. I thought it over. Wasteland horses are genuinely excellent. Incredible stamina, built for harsh conditions, way better than standard military horses up north. I'd already secured trade deals with several nomadic tribes. I've got over 300 horses right now, I told him. And since I may have borrowed a generous amount of family funds back in the day, I'll send you 200. Free of charge. William nearly choked on his tea. His eyes went wide like I'd just told him I could fly. Wait, free? I set my cup down with a knowing smile. Do I look like a man who makes bad deals? He wiped tea off his chin. No, and that's exactly why I'm terrified right now. What's the catch? 3 things. I held up 3 fingers. 1. BlackRock publicly acknowledges the trade partnership with Greystone territory. 2. Father uses his connections to open a trade route to the central royal lands. 3. Send me some awakened knights. The first 2? William nodded without blinking. The third one made him frown. Ron, you know family rules. Awakened bloodline bearers can't be sent away. I waved that off. I don't need your elite warriors. I'll take the weird ones. The oddballs with strange talents nobody wants. He raised an eyebrow. Even the ones with bizarre abilities? I literally have a knight whose power is making plants grow faster. He's a farmer knight, and he's one of my most valuable people. William stared at me like I'd grown a second head. Hey, plant growth knight. The useless talents are the ones I want most. Combat abilities are a dime a dozen. But someone who can accelerate crop yields? That's priceless out here. That actually made sense to him. He nodded slowly. There are plenty of minor branch family members with thin bloodlines and odd awakenings that nobody knows what to do with. I'll bring it up with the Earl. I raised my teacup. To a fruitful partnership. He raised his, then froze mid-air. Hold on. You said you borrowed family funds. That was 3 years ago. Were you planning all of this since then? I just clinked my cup against his and smiled. Some questions don't need answers. After that, William stayed for 3 days. I showed him around the territory, the new marketplace buzzing with traders, the construction projects, the whole operation running like clockwork. He kept making this face like a man watching his little brother suddenly become a CEO. Meanwhile, I had other headaches. Graham arrived with the caravan too, which meant I could keep working on my modern gunpowder research. The Magic World smokeless powder works, sure, but it's still not quite punchy enough for my taste. I handed that project off to Bran, my artillery guardian knight, since all I really know is that proper gunpowder has something to do with soap, which needs animal fat, which needs livestock, which needs grain we don't have yet. It's a whole chain of problems. And don't even get me started on the industrial bottlenecks. Greystone Valley is great for mining, but has zero water power for mills. The whole wasteland is basically a desert when it comes to rivers. Wind power? Plenty of wind, but about as reliable as a drunk messenger. Steam engines? Internal combustion? Sure, I'd love those, right after I find rubber for seals and gaskets, which doesn't exist here. Yet. One step at a time. Rome wasn't built in a day, and neither is a secret industrial revolution in a fantasy wasteland. When William finally left, standing at the new marketplace watching the crowds, he whispered, "I can't believe you did all this in 3 years." I looked out over my bustling little territory and said, "This is just the beginning." and the look on his face told me he finally understood. His exiled cousin wasn't sulking in the wilderness. He was building an empire, and nobody saw it coming. Morning of day 4, William's caravan was packed up and ready to roll. 200 of my finest wasteland horses stood in formation outside the castle. Shiny coats, muscles like sculptures, the kind of horses that make other horses feel insecure. William patted a black stallion on the neck and practically drooled. These are even better than I expected. The Earl will be thrilled. I nodded. Give father my regards. Then I leaned in close. And about those awakened knights, I'll push hard for it, he promised. But you know, final word belongs to the Earl. I know. We exchanged a look, the kind where two guys who just made a deal that could reshape the political map pretend it's totally casual. Then William swung onto his horse and rode off with the caravan. I stood at the gate watching until the last speck vanished over the horizon like some dramatic protagonist in a painting. Because honestly, I earned that moment. My lord, Morris materialized behind me like a bureaucratic ghost. The new officials are settled. Here's today's briefing. I grabbed the scroll and started walking. Iron production is up again, thanks to your improved smelting techniques, yes. But the blacksmiths say they still need more hands. Pick some experienced ones from the new refugees. Oh, and tell Gareth to send 10 soldiers to guard the gunpowder workshop, because nothing ruins your day like someone accidentally, or purposely, blowing up your secret weapons factory. Morris nodded and was about to scurry off when a guard came sprinting in. My lord, a patrol spotted a merchant caravan from the southeast. They say they're from the Red Coral Trading Company. From the Royal Territory. My eyes lit up. Finally, I told Morris to prepare a reception and headed to the Great Hall myself. This was a VIP guest. Waiting for me was Marcus, vice president of the Red Coral Trading Company, decked out in fancy silk robes like he'd just walked off a fashion runway. He bowed deeply. Esteemed lord, I am Marcus, here on behalf of the fourth prince to discuss our partnership. I waved him to sit. Tea was served. The hall smelled like snow pine and success. Marcus did that thing where he tried to subtly inspect my castle without being obvious about it. Spoiler, he was obvious. And clearly surprised. Yeah, buddy, not bad for a frontier wasteland outpost, huh? We did the polite dance first. How is the fourth prince? The prince admires your achievements. Oh, how kind. We're just a humble little territory. Blah, blah, blah. Then he handed me a gold-sealed letter with the prince's personal crest. A blue dragon with spread wings. Very dramatic. The letter basically said, give the salt to Marcus. Sales channels are ready. Short and to the point. I like that. Now here's where the fun begins. Marcus wanted 1,000 pounds of snow salt for the initial market launch. 1,000 pounds. Let me explain something. Snow salt is basically just regular salt with extra filtration steps. I could produce way more than I let on. But in this world, the stuff is worth more than its weight in gold. And if I suddenly revealed massive production capacity to a prince who commands armies? Yeah, that's how you get conquered on a Tuesday. I spent 5 years in the capital. I know exactly what kind of people these princes are. Trust is a luxury I can't afford. So I put on my best, concerned and regretful, face. 8,000 pounds. That's difficult. We can only produce about 300 pounds per month. The prince knows this. I sighed dramatically. I've got 500 pounds in storage right now. If you stay 7 days, maybe I can squeeze out another 100. Marcus looked disappointed for half a second before his professional smile snapped back on. Perhaps you could stretch a little further. I shook my head with practiced sadness. I truly wish I could. The salt mine just can't keep up. Academy Award performance, if I do say so myself. Marcus accepted it gracefully. 500 will suffice for the initial market. The prince values this as a long-term partnership. Good answer. I rewarded his reasonableness with a bonus offer. As a gesture of goodwill, I'll have my troops clear out the bandits on the trade route. His eyes went wide. You're going to eliminate the bandits? There's a sizable gang between here and the Northern Wind Fortress that's been attacking merchant caravans. We ran into some trouble ourselves, actually, Marcus admitted. Our guards barely kept them off. I sipped my tea like an action hero delivering a one-liner. My scouts have already located their hideout. Within 3 days, they won't exist anymore. Marcus looked at me like I'd just offered him a pile of gold. The prince will be delighted, just clearing the road for business, I said casually. As if deploying an army was something I did between breakfast and lunch. After Marcus left to rest, Morris slid over with the question I was waiting for. About the snow salt production. Keep it at 300 pounds a month. Sometimes drop it lower. I kept my voice flat. We don't make real money from this. The salt deal exists so I can wave around the fourth prince's name like a shield. The profit is political, not financial. Morris nodded, his eyes showing he completely understood the game. Smart man. I walked out onto the castle terrace and looked over my territory. Neat farmland stretching out like a chessboard. Mining operations humming in the distance. Workshops churning away. Beautiful. Oh right, I remembered. How's Edmund doing? Morris flipped open his notebook. Excellent, my lord. His plant growth ability has increased the test field wheat yield by 20%. 20%. My farmer knight, the guy everyone in the Blackrock family probably laughed at for having useless plant powers, just became the most strategically important person in my territory. I love being right. Give him 2 more assistants. And remind him about the salt-resistant grass project. Our entire horse breeding operation depends on him growing enough feed. Morris scribbled furiously, then added, Edmund mentioned his ability works even better with diverse grass varieties. Tell the trading caravans to collect every type of grass seed they can find on their routes, because that's my life now. Other lords collect swords and crowns. I collect grass seeds and nerdy knights with weird powers. And somehow, I'm winning. 100 fresh recruits stood in formation on the training ground. Most of them were former refugees who'd been training for about a month. They looked like soldiers if you squinted hard enough. Today was their final exam, and the test was real bandits. Gareth stood there in light armor with that massive steel greatsword I gave him strapped to his back, looking like Death's grumpy uncle. Next to him was Rook, the wild berserker I captured a while back, hugging his battle axe and grinning like a maniac at a buffet. The Lord says this mission isn't about dying, Gareth announced in his deep, scary voice. It's about seeing real blood and learning what a real fight looks like. The recruits gulped so loud I could hear it from where I was standing. They'd all heard the stories. The Blood Wolf gang was made up of desperate outlaws, some of them ex-noble soldiers with decent gear and zero regard for human life. Rook snorted and yelled in his broken common tongue. What are you afraid of? I once chopped down 3 tribal warriors by myself. You spineless shrimp can't handle a few bandits. The recruits turned red, but nobody dared talk back. Hard to argue with a man built like a bear who's covered in scars like a roadmap of violence. Now here's the thing, I went too. Me. Personally. On a bandit raid. Look, business and politics? That's my playground. Military stuff? I know absolutely nothing. The Blackrock family's special status meant I was never allowed near armies growing up. But I'm not a Blackrock anymore. I'm a lord now. And a lord who doesn't understand his own military is a lord who's going to get a very unpleasant surprise someday. Besides, that last fight with the Blood Eagle tribe was basically a massacre, not a real battle. I needed to see actual combat up close. So I strapped on a set of steel plate armor, which is way heavier than it looks, by the way, and quietly took my place next to Gareth. Rook was assigned as my personal bodyguard, which is either very reassuring or very terrifying, depending on how you feel about psychopaths protecting you. We marched out in the gray morning fog. Hooves and boots made this dull rhythmic sound that would have been atmospheric if half the recruits weren't visibly panicking. Some gripped their spears so tight their knuckles went white. Others kept licking their cracked lips and looking around like they expected a bandit behind every bush. Gareth leaned over to me. Young master, you really don't need to risk yourself. Bandit raids are small scale, but swords don't care who you are. I shook my head. Uncle Gareth, if I don't understand how my soldiers fight, how can I lead them? The Blackrock days are over. I'm learning everything from scratch. Rook butted in with his usual subtlety. The Lord is right. Hiding in a castle, what kind of man does that? A real warrior proves himself in enemy blood. I glanced at him sideways. This guy has zero volume control and even less tact. But ever since I beat him into submission, his loyalty has been rock solid. Annoying, but reliable, like a guard dog that barks at everything, including furniture. I patted his shoulder. Well then, make sure you keep me alive out there. I'd rather not die on my first real battlefield experience. Rook slapped his chest so hard it echoed. Relax. Nobody touches a hair on your head while I breathe. Comforting. Truly. We reached the edge of a dense forest and Gareth signaled a halt. This was bandit territory, complex terrain, perfect for ambushes, Generally the kind of place you don't want to be. Scouts report their hideout is in an abandoned village deep in these woods, Gareth whispered. About 50 to 60 men. Decent gear, but terrible discipline, mostly rabble. Though there's one awakened wild knight we need to watch out for. I nodded, staring into the fog-wrapped trees. My heart was hammering under the plate armor. Not from fear exactly, more like that feeling you get before jumping into cold water. Your body screaming, this is a bad idea, while your brain says, we're doing it anyway. Gareth's battle plan was simple. Very simple. Rook takes 20 elites and loops around to cut off their escape. Gareth leads the main force straight in. Priority target, the Awakened Knight. Honestly, the plan was so basic even I could spot the risks. But with green troops who've never seen combat, fancy tactics would just cause chaos. Sometimes simple and dumb beats clever and confused. Rook flashed his murder grin. That knight's head is mine. Gareth turned to me with a serious look. Stay behind me. Do not rush forward. Got it. My hand found the sword at my hip. I gripped it like it owed me money. Rook's team vanished into the bushes like shadows. The main force crept into the forest in a loose formation. It was dead quiet, just birds and rustling leaves. The recruits were breathing so loud it sounded like a windstorm. Then some genius stepped on a branch. Crack. Everyone around him shot death glares that could have killed the bandits, all by themselves. Then, a sharp whistle from ahead. We'd been spotted. Charge, Gareth roared. Don't give them time. He ripped out his greatsword and launched forward like a human cannonball. The recruits screamed battle cries and followed, mostly fueled by adrenaline and the fear of looking like cowards in front of the scary old knight. The forest erupted into chaos. Bandits came pouring out from behind trees and bushes, swinging swords and axes, looking absolutely feral. These were desperate men with nothing to lose and everything to stab. And there I was. First real battlefield. Screaming everywhere. Metal crashing against metal. People howling in pain. My senses were getting absolutely hammered from every direction. Then an arrow came flying at me from the side. Time slowed down. My metal control ability activated on pure instinct. The arrow just stopped, frozen in midair, inches from my face, just hanging there like a really aggressive hummingbird. Young master, watch out. Gareth's greatsword swept horizontally and cut two charging bandits clean in half. Warm blood splattered across my face. It tasted like iron and smelled like a rusty fence. I wiped it off and thought, that's it. That's what I've been nervous about. The fear evaporated. The overthinking stopped. And my brain went ice cold. The same calm I get during a tough negotiation, except instead of contracts, people were dying. I felt my bloodline power flowing through me, that absolute control over metal, sharper and clearer than ever. Don't worry about me, Uncle Gareth. My voice came out so calm it surprised even me. I flicked my wrist. The arrow hovering in midair spun around and rocketed back into the forest at twice the speed. A scream echoed from somewhere in the trees. Return to sender. No refunds. Gareth shot me a look, half shocked, half impressed, then got pulled back into the fight. The bandits were tough individually, but crumbling under organized pressure. Our recruits were sloppy, but they had numbers and formation on their side. But the real threat? The awakened wild knight. He hadn't shown up yet. Where's the wild knight? Gareth bellowed, his greatsword cutting through another bandit like butter through. Well, a bandit. As if the universe had been waiting for that exact question, the forest answered with a roar so loud the ground shook. Out from the abandoned village came stomping this massive dude in full iron armor and a face-covering helmet, wielding a sword the size of a door. This was Bloodwolf, the bandit boss, the awakened wild knight, the reason we brought 100 guys instead of 10. Rook immediately lost his mind with excitement. His eyes lit up like a kid seeing cake. Finally, someone worth fighting. He screamed like an animal, every muscle in his body bulging to cartoon proportions, and charged straight at Bloodwolf. His steel axe came down with enough force to split the earth. Clang. The impact sound was so loud the recruits nearby grabbed their ears. Bloodwolf caught the axe on his giant sword like it was nothing. The ground under both of them actually cracked and sank from the force. Two superhuman idiots hitting each other so hard they're remodeling the landscape. Normal Tuesday in my territory. A wild tribesman warrior, Bloodwolf's voice echoed from behind his helmet, sounding almost amused. Nice weapon. Shame about the weak arms. Oh no. Rook's face went from battle frenzy to pure volcanic rage in about half a second. You're dead. He went absolutely berserk. Axe grinding against sword, sparks flying, then a sudden grab for Bloodwolf's throat with his bare hand like some kind of wrestling move. Bloodwolf dodged back fast and countered with a horizontal sweep. They separated for a heartbeat, then crashed into each other again. Axe shadows and sword flashes everywhere, dust swirling around them like a miniature tornado. I watched closely, analyzing. Bloodwolf was clearly stronger and more skilled than any regular bandit. He was actually pushing Rook back. Every swing of his massive sword made this heavy whooshing sound, and Rook, despite going completely wild, couldn't break through his defense. Uncle Gareth, what's his bloodline power? I whispered. Gareth frowned. Not enough intel. But judging by his strength and speed, probably something like giant strength or iron body, some kind of physical enhancement. Meanwhile, Rook was getting frustrated. He could feel me watching. The big guy's pride was on the line. So naturally, he did the most Rook thing possible. His eyes turned bloodshot red. His skin flushed an unnatural crimson. Veins popped out across his body like angry snakes. He let out a howl that did not sound human. Full berserker rage mode. Activated. His axe speed literally doubled. The swings became a blur, each one carrying enough force to crack boulders. The ground beneath them splintered with every impact. Clang, 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 clang. Sparks flew like fireworks. Bloodwolf was getting pushed back now, his giant sword actually showing chips and cracks. The tables had turned, or so it looked. But I noticed something that made my stomach tighten. Bloodwolf was stumbling backward, sure, but his footwork was perfect. Not a single wasted step. And behind that helmet, I could feel his eyes calculating, studying Rook's patterns with ice-cold patience. This guy is no ordinary bandit, I muttered. He's watching a berserker rage out, and he still hasn't used his bloodline power. Gareth's eyes went sharp. He gripped his sword and stepped forward. Rook, fall back. Something's wrong with this one, but Rook in rage mode has the listening skills of a brick wall. He kept swinging like a maniac. Then Bloodwolf laughed, this creepy, inhuman chuckle, and his body twisted in this impossible way, finding a gap in Rook's axe storm. His sword shot out like a striking viper. Squelch. The blade punched straight through Rook's shoulder. Blood sprayed everywhere. Rook roared in pain. And then, because he's Rook, he leaned into the sword and swung his axe at Bloodwolf's skull. Bloodwolf barely dodged. The axe scraped across his helmet, sending sparks flying. He kicked Rook in the gut, ripped his sword free, and jumped back. Rook, I shouted, starting to move forward, but Gareth's arm blocked me like a steel barrier. Don't move, young master, Gareth growled, sword raised. This one is dangerous, and then Bloodwolf proved him right. The bandit leader let out an inhuman howl. His muscles started swelling, grotesquely, impossibly, stretching his iron armor until it creaked and groaned. He ripped off his deformed helmet and revealed a face covered in tribal tattoos. He was a barbarian. A barbarian. The recruits panicked and stumbled backward, our formation crumbling like wet sand. My blood ran cold. Barbarians, the most savage warriors from the frozen tundra. Same ancestors as the wild folk like Rook, but infinitely more brutal and bloodthirsty. Born with supernatural strength, almost all of them awaken bloodline powers as adults. They're the boogeyman every kingdom's army fears. 1,000 years ago, the founding war of Angla drove these natural-born killers to the frozen wastelands. So what the hell was one doing here, leading a bandit gang in MY backyard? This reeked of something bigger. Uncle Gareth, I said, my voice going cold and sharp. I want him alive. Gareth nodded grimly. Understood. Bloodwolf licked blood off his lips and grinned with his tattooed face. You're all dying here today? Then he erupted. His sword screamed through the air straight at Gareth. Gareth didn't dodge, he blocked head-on. The two giant swords collided with a thunderous boom that sent shockwaves rippling outward and dust flying in every direction. Bloodwolf stumbled back 2 steps. Gareth barely swayed. My old knight uncle was stronger. Barbarian strength? That's all you've got? Gareth snarled and swung again. The blade sliced the air with a shriek. Bloodwolf looked genuinely shocked. Apparently nobody told him the grumpy grandpa knight could outmuscle a barbarian. His pride took the hit badly. He roared, muscles inflating again, veins bulging under his skin like worms, pushing even deeper into his bloodline power. Then came the real transformation. Bloodwolf threw his head back and unleashed a roar that shook the forest. His body ballooned to nearly 10 feet tall. Muscles piled on muscles like granite boulders. Gray fur sprouted and covered his entire body. His eyes burned crimson red. That door-sized sword now looked like a toothpick in his enormous hands, and every casual swing created hurricane-force winds. Berserker rage, Gareth's eyes went wide. Then he caught himself. No, this is the barbarian exclusive blood fury ability. The thing standing in front of us wasn't a man anymore. It was a 10-foot furry rage monster with glowing red eyes and a sword that could flatten buildings. Everyone fall back, Gareth roared and charged straight at it. Because of course he did. And there I stood, covered in someone else's blood, watching my elderly knight uncle sprint at a 10-foot werewolf barbarian, thinking, this is definitely not what business school prepared me for. The two giant swords smashed together again, and this time Gareth got knocked back several steps, his hands going numb. Bloodwolf was laughing like a psycho, raining down hits like a furry wrecking ball. But Uncle Gareth didn't become the scariest old man in the north by losing fights. He activated his own bloodline power, Giant. His body inflated like someone was pumping air into a balloon made of muscle. Skin turned bronze. Height shot up to about 10 feet. His great sword, which normally looks comically oversized, suddenly looked like a regular knife in his enormous hands. Giant bloodline, Bloodwolf's eyes went wide, then immediately filled with crazy excitement. Yes, now you're worthy. Two 10-foot monsters started swinging building-sized swords at each other. Every collision sounded like actual thunder. Shockwaves sent dust and leaves spiraling into mini tornadoes. The recruits backed up so far they were practically in the next zip code. I stood my ground and kept my eyes locked on Bloodwolf. Rook stumbled over to me, clutching his bleeding shoulder, looking absolutely furious. That barbarian bastard. He actually cut me. I glanced at him. Can you still fight? He spat out blood and grinned. This is a scratch. This man has a hole in his shoulder, and he's calling it a scratch. I both admire and worry about him. Meanwhile, the Gareth versus Bloodwolf show was reaching peak insanity. Sparks flying, thunder booming, the ground cracking under their feet. Gareth's decades of combat experience were giving him the edge, slowly pushing Bloodwolf back. But the barbarian's raw power was nothing to sneeze at. Then Bloodwolf pulled a dirty trick. Mid-swing with his giant sword, his left hand suddenly whipped a hidden hand axe from his belt and hurled it straight at Gareth's throat. Lightning fast. Sneaky as hell. Watch out. My eyes went wide, and my metal control activated on reflex. The axe froze in midair, 1 foot from Gareth's neck. Then it just dropped to the ground with a sad little clang. Bloodwolf stared at me in shock. That was his mistake. Gareth seized the opening and swung his great sword like a baseball bat right into Bloodwolf's chest. Crack. Blood erupted from a wound so deep I could see bone. The giant barbarian staggered backward and crashed to the ground. He lay there, fear flickering in his eyes for the first time, staring at me like I was some kind of witch. I walked up calmly. Now then, let's have a chat. Tell me, why is a barbarian leading a bandit gang in my wasteland? Who sent you? His fangs ground together. Internal struggle. Pride versus survival. Finally he snarled. Kill me. Barbarians never submit. I smiled. Is that so? I flicked my fingers. A sword lifted off the ground and stabbed straight into his thigh. He grunted in pain, but refused to scream. Tough customer. Respect. But I'm tougher. You can die here, meaninglessly, forgotten in a ditch, I said, my voice going ice cold. The kind of cold I usually reserve for contract negotiations with terrible terms. Or you can talk, and maybe I let you live. Something broke behind those red eyes. His head dropped. I was sent to scout the southern territories. The northern tribes are gathering. They're coming south. My stomach dropped. Every 5 to 10 years, when the barbarian population outgrows what the frozen tundra can feed, they raid south. It's like a horrifying seasonal event that nobody puts on their calendar, but everyone dreads. But this time sounded different. Northern tribes? I pressed. You mean all of them? United? Bloodwolf nodded weakly, blood pooling under him. The great shaman prophesied a 1,000-year frost. The worst cold disaster in history. Every tribe must go south. Or die. Gareth's face went white. A united barbarian army. That hasn't happened in 300 years, and I knew exactly what happened 300 years ago. The last barbarian coalition smashed through the wasteland, broke through the northern wind fortress, the major defensive stronghold, and killed hundreds of thousands of people. The kingdom was at peak strength back then and barely pushed them back. Now, the kingdom is busy with 3 princes playing Game of Thrones. The king is sick, and the northern defenses are probably held together with wishful thinking and old rope. Great. Just great. When does your army move? How many? I demanded. Bloodwolf was fading, his face ghost white from blood loss, but he choked out, 1 month. At most. The tribal army. At least 1,000 warriors. 1,000. Gareth nearly swallowed his tongue. Now let me explain why 1,000 sounds small, but is actually terrifying. Barbarian, warriors, means awakened bloodline fighters. Every single one of them is a one-man army type. 1,000 of those is enough to steamroll the entire northern border like it's made of paper. My jaw clenched. Target, Northern Wind Fortress, Bloodwolf rasped. The great shaman says, this time, we reclaim the ancestral lands. The ancestral lands, being the entire northern half of the Anglo Kingdom, including, naturally, the wasteland. Including, specifically, my wasteland. Now the good news. Their main attack would probably target the western wasteland, which is richer and more developed. The eastern side where I am would be a secondary front, just a distraction. The bad news, secondary front, still means barbarian warriors showing up at my door wanting to kill everyone. Distraction doesn't feel very distracting when you're the one being distracted at. Insane. Gareth pressed his sword to Bloodwolf's throat. You savages think you can take Anglo territory? You don't understand what's happening on the ice plains. Bloodwolf coughed. The frost will kill everyone. South or extinction. There is no choice. Part of me, a very small, very inconvenient part, almost felt sorry for them. Almost. Then I remembered they wanted to invade my territory, and the sympathy evaporated. I waved Gareth down and kept interrogating. How many other scouts are in the wasteland? His eyes flickered. He didn't want to answer. I wiggled my fingers, and the sword in his leg rotated half a turn. He howled. 3. 3 other teams. Disguised as bandits, scattered across the wasteland, mapping defenses and supply routes. I don't know where they are. We only report to the great shaman. I kept pushing. Attack direction? Who commands the main force? Because apparently my life wasn't complicated enough with princes, trade deals, secret gunpowder workshops, and grass seed collection. Now I get to add incoming barbarian apocalypse to the to-do list. Some days it really doesn't pay to be a genius lord in a fantasy wasteland. The main force comes through the frozen canyon, led by the great chieftain, Gordon, frozen canyon, western wasteland border with the ice plains. Just as I suspected. But when Gareth heard that name, his face went the color of old milk. Gordon? The Skull Crusher? I looked at him. You know him? Gareth's voice dropped to something I'd never heard before. Genuine dread. 20 years ago at the Northern Wind Fortress battle, Gordon personally killed 3 Moonlight Knights. If the Grand Duke himself hadn't stepped in, the fortress would have fallen. 3 Moonlight Knights. Those are elite of the elite. And one barbarian just chopped through them like firewood. Cool. Love that. Not terrified at all. Now here's where my brain did that thing where it runs 17 calculations at once while my face stays perfectly calm. Option A. Warn the kingdom about the barbarian invasion. Be a hero. Get a medal. Maybe a parade. Option B. Say absolutely nothing. I picked B. Look, hear me out. If the barbarians smash through the Northern Wind Fortress and pour into the rich northern provinces, they'll be too busy looting the good stuff to bother with my crappy eastern wasteland. We're the leftovers nobody wants at the buffet. That's actually great for us. The nightmare scenario? Barbarians come out of Frozen Canyon, hit the fortress, fail to break through, and get stuck wandering the wasteland looking for Plan B. And guess who becomes Plan B? The guy with the suspiciously prosperous territory in the east. Me. Honestly, though, I wasn't betting on the fortress holding. The kingdom is a mess right now. 4 dukes all scheming against each other. 3 princes fighting over daddy's throne, and the northern duke left to defend the border basically alone. The fortress hasn't seen real combat in 20 years. Guards are probably playing cards and getting fat. Uncle Gareth, starting today, wartime footing. All militia training doubled. Patrol range doubled. Especially the northern border. Yes, sir. But our numbers, I smirked. Relax. The barbarians aren't coming for us first. We're too poor to bother with. But we need to be ready for stragglers and raiders who spill over after the main fight. Then I played my real card. Also, send messengers to the nearby wild folk tribes. Tell them Gordon is back. Gareth's eyes lit up like a lantern. You want to ally with them? I nodded, gazing at the dark northern sky. The wild folk and barbarians share ancestors, but to the barbarians, the wild folk are traitors. We lose this fight, we can retreat through Grey Wolf Pass back to Blackrock County. The wild folk? They've got nowhere to run. Gareth got it immediately. They hate the barbarians even more than we do. Exactly. I allowed myself a cold little smile. They have no choice but to join us. Checkmate before the game even starts. I love politics. Back at Greystone Valley, I shoved 500 pounds of snow salt at the Fourth Prince's merchant and sent him packing. No time for pleasantries when there's an apocalypse on the schedule. Gareth, any word from the wild folk tribes? Fastest riders sent out, but the tribes are nomadic. Could take a while. I nodded and looked down at the militia drilling below. Good spirit, shiny equipment, zero real experience. Against barbarian warriors who are basically superhuman murder machines, these guys would fold like paper. I needed to fix that. Fast. Morris, shut down all farm tool production at the steel mill. I want every old soldier equipped with steel armor and weapons within 1 month. Morris looked like I'd asked him to build a castle out of cheese. My lord, armor takes forever to forge. We don't have the manpower. I drummed my fingers on the desk. They just need to hammer out steel bars and plates. I'll handle the rest. Metal control powers, baby. Why hire 100 blacksmiths when you can literally bend steel with your mind? Sometimes being the protagonist has its perks. Morris scribbled frantically, then looked up. And the cannons? I'll handle those personally too. My eyes sharpened. And tell the gunpowder workshop to increase production. Send Bran to me. Bran rushed in looking like he'd face-planted into a firecracker. Soot and powder dust everywhere. You called, my lord. How's artillery training going? He straightened up like a proud father at a school play. First batch of 20 gunners can operate the cannons smoothly. Accuracy is much improved. Only, we're burning through gunpowder pretty fast. I chuckled. We've got 7 warehouses of raw materials. Gunpowder won't be a problem. Starting today, double the training. Also, recruit 30 sharp guys and form a second artillery team. Yes, SIR. Bran practically vibrated with excitement. Artillery guys are a special breed. After everyone left, I stood alone, staring north toward the frozen canyon. Somewhere beyond that horizon, a 10-foot barbarian warlord named Gordon, the Skull Crusher, was assembling 1,000 superhuman warriors for a full-scale invasion. Gordon, Skull Crusher. I muttered the name, letting it sink in. Then I cracked a cold smile. You go smash your head against Northern Wind Fortress. The Eastern Wasteland isn't the soft target you think it is. Famous last words? Possibly. But a man can dream. The wild folk showed up way faster than expected. 3 days later, hoofbeats thundered outside Greystone Castle. A squad of riders in beast furs with long knives on their hips appeared at the gate. Leading them was a massive, scarred-up middle-aged man who looked like he'd been in a fight with a bear, and the bear lost. I am Iron Bone, chieftain of the Black Wolf tribe. His voice was sandpaper on gravel. I hear Lord Ron wants to discuss the barbarian situation. I stood on the castle wall, looking down at him like a king receiving a peasant. Power dynamics matter, especially with wild folk who respect strength above everything. Iron Bone had about a dozen elite warriors behind him, every single one radiating, "I will lend you energy." Chief Iron Bone, welcome. I gave a measured nod. Please, come inside. In the meeting hall, Iron Bone immediately tried to big dog me. Barbarians raid south every 5 to 10 years. Drought in the north this year, so we expected it. He downed his wine in one gulp, wiped his mouth with a rough hand, and shot me a look that said, "Cute little southern lord, so nervous. We're prepared. Lord Ron shouldn't worry so much." "Oh, buddy, you have no idea what's coming." I smiled pleasantly. "You're right, chief. Barbarian raids are nothing new." I let the pause stretch, tapping the table. But this time, they're not raiding. They're migrating. Iron Bone's cup slammed on the table. Wine splashed everywhere. Migrating, his scars twisted as his eyes narrowed. Lord Ron, those are dangerous words to throw around. Before he could grill me further, Gareth burst in. Young master, several more tribal chiefs have arrived. I let my smile widen just a fraction. Seems word travels fast. Chief Ironbone, shall we wait for the others before we get into the details? Ironbone's face shifted, that dismissive attitude crumbled, and something heavier settled in. He sat back down slowly. Fine. And just like that, the chess pieces started assembling themselves on my board. Multiple wildfolk chiefs, all showing up at MY Castle, all about to hear news that would make them desperate enough to do whatever I suggested. Is it manipulative? Absolutely. Am I the only person in this room with cannons, rifles, and a plan? Also absolutely. Let the negotiations begin. The meeting hall filled up like a really tense party where everyone hates each other. Wildfolk chiefs walked in one by one, some wearing wolf pelts, some with deer antlers on their heads, each bringing a few warriors who looked like they ate rocks for breakfast. The room went from tense to one wrong look and someone dies real fast. Several chiefs were already glaring daggers at each other before they even sat down. Old grudges, tribal rivalries, the usual. But they all came because of one word, barbarians. The last to arrive was a white-haired old man leaning on a bone staff, flanked by two young female warriors. Every chief in the room actually lowered their heads when he entered. Respect from wildfolk is rarer than rain in my wasteland, so this guy was clearly a big deal. Wolf, who came with his father Ironbone, whispered in my ear, the shaman elder of the White Wolf tribe. Wisest person among all wild folk. Good. I needed smart people in this room, not just angry ones. Chiefs, I said, keeping my voice steady. Hearing rumors secondhand is worthless. So instead of me telling you what's happening, let me show you someone who was there. Bring in Bloodwolf. The doors swung open and two of my soldiers dragged in a beaten, bloodied barbarian who looked like he'd been through a meat grinder. Which, honestly, he kind of had. Between Rook, Gareth, and that sword I jammed in his leg, the man had seen better days. But even half dead, his eyes were still murder. When he saw a room full of wildfolk chiefs, his pupils shrank to pinpoints, and he growled like an actual wolf. Barbarian, Ironbone shot to his feet, hand on his knife, eyes screaming murder. Other chiefs went for their weapons too. The room went from tense party to about to be a crime scene. I raised my hand. Everyone calm down. This guest can't hurt a fly right now. They shoved Bloodwolf to his knees, but the stubborn lunatic kept his chin up, cursing at everyone in barbarian language. Real classy stuff, I'm sure. The shaman elder slammed his bone staff on the floor. Silence. And I swear, the barbarian actually shut up. Whatever that old man had, it worked on barbarians too. Bloodwolf went quiet, but kept sweeping the room with hateful eyes. I walked up to him, and, in fluent barbarian dialect. Yeah, I speak that too, 5 years in the capital weren't wasted. Asked. Tell everyone here the real purpose of your Blood Axe tribe's invasion. Bloodwolf sneered and spat bloody saliva at my feet. You descendants of traitors don't deserve to know our glorious plans. All right then. Hard way it is. I was about to persuade him with some creative metal manipulation when the shaman elder beat me to it. The old man shuffled forward, pressed his bony fingers against Bloodwolf's forehead, and started chanting. Bloodwolf began shaking violently, terror flooding into those defiant eyes for the first time. The cold. The great Gordon will lead us. Reclaim ancestral lands. Northern Wind Fortress. Must be broken. His voice came out flat and mechanical, like someone was reading his brain like a book. Which, apparently, is exactly what was happening. Mental magic. The wildfolk shaman just performed the fantasy equivalent of hacking someone's hard drive. Note to self. Never make the shaman elder angry. The old man removed his hand, and Bloodwolf collapsed like a puppet with cut strings. Dead silence. Just torches crackling. The shaman elder spoke, his voice heavy as stone. The northern drought has been severe. The Ice Plains cold waves will be far worse than usual this year. Habitable land on the tundra is vanishing. The barbarians aren't coming to raid. They're coming to stay. Ironbone's fist crashed onto the table. Gordon, that lunatic. He thinks breaking the fortress solves everything. A chief in bear furs scoffed. He couldn't do it 20 years ago. The fortress walls are taller than mountains. But it doesn't matter, I cut in calmly. Everyone turned to look at me. If they can't break through the fortress, where do you think they'll settle instead? The temperature in the room dropped about 10 degrees. Metaphorically, Chiefs looked at each other with slowly dawning horror. Ironbone's knuckles cracked. The Eastern Wasteland. Correct. I stood up and walked to the big map on the wall. If the fortress holds, the barbarians need somewhere to live. The Western Wasteland faces the main attack, but the East, I tapped the map. Less defended. More appealing. My finger landed hard on Greystone Valley. I looked every chief dead in the eye. And the first thing they'll do is eliminate the current residents of this land. That means you. You could hear heartbeats in the silence. The shaman elder closed his eyes, deep wrinkles carving worry across his ancient face. Lord Ron speaks truth. The barbarians call us traitors. Once their advance stalls, we wild folk will be the first they destroy. Ironbone exploded to his feet, eyes blazing. Then we fight. We've survived in this wasteland for 1,000 years. We won't run. Ironbone, an older chief, shouted him down. Have you forgotten 20 years ago? A dozen tribes combined couldn't stop the barbarian flanking force. If the fortress army hadn't crushed their main force, we'd all be dead. What do we even fight with? Ironbone went pale, fists shaking, but he had no answer. The math didn't work. They all knew it. Perfect timing. Everyone, I said, walking to the window. Times have changed. I yanked the curtains open and pointed down at the training grounds below. Rows of soldiers in steel armor drilling in formation. And in the distance, boom, a test cannon fired, sending a plume of smoke into the sky. 20 years ago, you were alone. But now, I'm on your side. I have quality weapons, trained troops, and I pointed at the rising smoke. Cannons that will make any enemy think twice. The chiefs crowded to the window, eyes going wide at weapons they'd never seen before. Ironbone stared at the cannons like a caveman seeing fire. Those iron tubes, they're really that powerful? I smiled. How about a demonstration? Half an hour later, out in the wasteland. Boom. A cliff face 100 meters away exploded into gravel. Rocks flew in every direction. Several young warriors literally stumbled backward. The shaman elder jabbed his bone staff into the ground to keep from falling over. And this was a man who'd mind-hacked a barbarian without flinching. This is the Anglo people's new weapon, he whispered, voice trembling. No, I stood next to the smoking cannon, wreathed in gunpowder haze, probably looking incredibly cool. At least I hope so. This is our weapon. If you ally with me, these cannons protect your tribes too. Ironbone stared at the still smoking barrel, his expression shifting from shock to something I liked much better. Desperate, hungry enthusiasm. Lord Ron, tell us what you need. Every chief turned to me, waiting. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is how you run a negotiation. Step 1, scare them with the problem. Step 2, show them you're the only solution. Step 3, blow up a cliff. Works every time. I looked around the room at all these grizzled wild folk chiefs and said the thing I knew would start a riot. We form an alliance. Offense and defense, together, pause for effect. And I'll be the leader. The room erupted. You'd think I'd insulted their mothers, their horses, and their ancestors all at once. A huge chief with beast tattoos on his face, blood claw, slammed the table and stood up. Take orders from some kid? In your dreams. Ironbone shut him down immediately. Blood claw, did you already forget the cannon that turned a cliff into gravel 5 minutes ago? Ron has power we don't, which is true. The wild folk big tribes can field maybe 500 cavalry, which is impressive. But cavalry versus cannons is like fists versus lightning. My territory is the strongest force in the Eastern Wasteland, and everyone in this room knew it, even if their pride was choking on the fact. Bloodclaw sneered. So what? Wild folk warrior honor cannot be handed to an outsider. Ah yes, honor. The thing people yell about right before they lose everything. Before the shouting turned into stabbing, the shaman elder cracked his bone staff on the floor. Enough. Instant silence. That old man has the voice of a god and the patience of a rock. He walked up to me, his cloudy eyes drilling straight into mine. Young man, why should we believe in you? I didn't blink. Because I have no escape either. If the barbarians come east, my territory burns too. You can either work with me and survive, or fight alone and get picked off one by one. Your choice. The shaman studied me for a long, uncomfortable moment. Then, if we agree, what do you offer? Besides cannon support, I let a smile creep in. My blacksmiths will forge quality weapons for your warriors. That got everyone's attention. Iron weapons are like gold to wild folk tribes. They have almost none. Chiefs who were mid-argument suddenly went very quiet, mentally counting how many swords they could get. Bloodclaw squinted suspiciously. Why would you be so generous? I'm not generous, I said flatly. I'm practical. The stronger my allies are, the better my chances of not dying. Simple math. The shaman elder actually laughed, this dry, crackling sound that showed a mouthful of broken teeth. Good. Very good. He spun around, raised his bone staff high, and declared to the whole room. In the name of the ancestral spirits, the White Wolf tribe allies with Lord Ron. Ironbone stepped up immediately. The Black Wolf tribe honors its existing pact. One by one, the other chiefs followed. Some reluctantly, some eagerly, but they all nodded. Bloodclaw stood there looking like he'd swallowed a wasp, but with every major tribe siding with me, he had no choice. He gave the angriest nod I've ever seen. I kept my face perfectly calm. Inside, doing backflips. But a leader doesn't celebrate until the war is won. Then we begin preparations immediately. Gareth, give the chiefs a tour of our defenses. After everyone filed out, I stood alone on the castle wall, staring north. Gareth appeared behind me like my personal shadow of pessimism. Young master, do you actually trust these wild folk? I chuckled. Trust is irrelevant. What matters is they have zero alternatives. I tapped the stone wall. We're short on soldiers. We need their manpower. Besides, I never expected them to follow orders perfectly. A few iron swords cost us almost nothing. As long as they pinned down the barbarian flanks on the battlefield, every weapon we gave them pays for itself 10 times over. Gareth frowned. Bloodclaw's tribe is clearly hostile. They might sabotage us. I laughed and patted the old man's shoulder. That's exactly why I made Ironbone and the shaman declare first. Bloodclaw is angry, but he's not stupid enough to defy the White Wolf and Black Wolf tribes simultaneously. My finger traced a crack in the castle wall. When barbarian swords are actually at his throat, he'll discover that wild folk honor doesn't stop decapitation. The next month turned my territory into a war machine. Hammers rang day and night on the castle walls. Workers built a second outer wall and studded it with sharpened wooden stakes. Because if you can't have a moat, pointy sticks are the next best thing. I personally supervised everything from the new watchtower. Move those 2 cannons on the east side, I told the head engineer. Their firing angle is too narrow. If barbarians loop around from the north, those guns become expensive decoration. He wiped sweat off his forehead and nodded. Right away, my lord. I kept my promise to the wild folk, delivered fresh steel battle axes and spears. Not a huge amount, but enough to dramatically boost their morale. The shaman elder came to inspect the weapons himself, running his rough fingers along the axe blades. Satisfied nod. Good. Elder, rest assured, I told him with a smile. Our fates are tied together now. That night, my study burned bright with candles. A rough map spread across my desk, marked with barbarian attack routes and our defense positions. Gareth stood beside me, looking grim. Scouts report barbarian vanguards already in the western wasteland. Multiple pioneer territories have been burned. Survivors are fleeing toward the northern wind fortress. His voice went heavy. They're advancing faster than we predicted. I tapped the fortress on the map. And what's our beloved fourth prince doing about it? Gareth shook his head. Northern Wind Fortress has sealed its gates, refusing refugees. Guards doubled on the walls, but no counterattack. No sortie. Nothing. A candle popped and my shadow danced violently on the wall. I laughed, cold and sharp. Our fourth prince, still as brilliant as ever, hiding behind walls while his people burn. Classic royal behavior. Really inspires confidence. Gareth hesitated, then spoke quietly. My lord, if the fortress stays passive, the barbarian main force might spare troops to attack the eastern wasteland. They need supplies, and our livestock would be very tempting. You're right. My eyes traced the map, the borderline between our territory and barbarian activity zones. Then I grabbed a charcoal pencil and drew several arrows. They'll split forces through this mountain pass. Gareth leaned in and went pale. That route goes straight through Bloodclaw's territory. I smiled. Cold, sharp, calculated. And that is exactly why I gave the newest, best batch of weapons to Bloodclaw's tribe first. Gareth's jaw dropped as it clicked. You deliberately. Bloodclaw wants to prove wild folk are tough? I'm giving him the chance. I folded the map neatly. When the barbarian vanguard crashes into a fully armed Bloodclaw war party, No matter who wins, we benefit. Gareth nodded slowly, understanding spreading across his face. If Bloodclaw wins, it weakens the barbarian advance. And if he loses, I finished, my voice so calm it was almost cruel. Every other tribe learns that fighting alone is suicide. They'll cling to our alliance like drowning men grabbing a rope. Is it cold? Yes. Is it manipulative? Absolutely. Am I using an arrogant chief as either a shield or a cautionary tale? 100%. But this is war. And in war, the guy who plans 3 moves ahead is the guy who's still breathing when it's over. Welcome to my chessboard. Every piece has a purpose, even the ones that don't know it yet. 3 days. That's all it took for my prediction to come true. A blood-soaked horse came crashing through the gates at dawn. The rider, a Bloodclaw warrior, basically fell off the saddle like a sack of potatoes. Broken arrows sticking out of his leather armor, half his body drenched in blood. Real cheerful morning scene. I was doing my wall inspection rounds and ran down immediately, grabbed his trembling hand, cold, sticky, disgusting, and asked what happened. My lord. Ambush. Chief Bloodclaw. Trapped in Broken Blade Valley. My eyes narrowed. Broken Blade Valley was only 3 days from my territory. How many barbarians? At least 2,000. He coughed blood everywhere. They let me go on purpose. Said they want all wild folk to see what happens when you resist. The guards started panicking. Someone whispered, 2,000? Our entire force is under 500. Yeah. Thanks for the math lesson, buddy. Really helpful for morale. I shot to my feet. Gareth, assemble all cavalry. Rook, get Iron Bone, the shaman elder, and every chief here now. Rook took off like a cannonball with legs. The wounded messenger's eyes flickered with gratitude before he passed out cold. I had him carried to the healers and marched straight to the war room. Now, let me take a moment to appreciate the beautiful, terrible irony of this situation. Bloodclaw, the guy who screamed about wild folk honor, who sneered at my alliance, who basically called me a kid playing war, went and attacked the barbarians by himself. The idiot went looking for a fight and found 2,000 of them. The barbarians don't have cavalry. Bloodclaw's riders could have easily retreated. The fact that he got surrounded means he charged in like a maniac. Probably yelled something about glory. Probably thought his new steel weapons made him invincible. Spoiler, they didn't. That arrogant pig. Ironbone's voice hit the war room like thunder as he stormed in. I told everyone his stupidity would get people killed. I pointed calmly at Broken Blade Valley on the map. Bloodclaw's main force is pinned here. The barbarians deliberately released a messenger. They want us scared and confused. Ironbone's fist cratered the table. The map curled up at the corner. More footsteps. The shaman elder shuffled in with the other chiefs crowding behind him. His bone staff tapped the floor like a slow heartbeat. Those cloudy eyes fixed on me. Young alliance leader. We've heard the news. What is your plan? I looked around the room. Every eye on me. This was the moment. We rescue them. Are you insane? The chief with the snake tattoo exploded. Risk our people to save that arrogant fool. The room erupted into arguing. Several chiefs exchanged skeptical glances. Nobody wanted to die saving the guy who'd mocked our alliance a month ago. I let them argue for exactly 10 seconds. Then I tapped the table until silence returned. I'm not rescuing Bloodclaw. My voice came out ice cold. I'm rescuing US. I pointed at the map. If Bloodclaw's tribe gets wiped out, who's next? My finger slid across tribal territories. Red Snake Tribe? Black Wolf? Or do the barbarians skip straight to Greystone? The shaman's eyes sharpened. Go on. The barbarians sent that messenger to test us. They want to see if we abandon our own. If we do, I clenched my fist over the map. Every tribe in this alliance will ask the same question. Will they abandon me next? Ironbone grunted. They'll think we're weak. Exactly. But if we respond fast and hit hard, we save a fighting force and prove the alliance is real. Not just words around a table. Snake Tattoo Chief squinted at me. Pretty speech. But that's 2,000 barbarians. How do we fight that? I allowed myself the tiniest smile. Head on? We can't. But we have something they don't know about. I turned to Gareth. Artillery status. 8 light field cannons loaded on wagons. Powder and shot fully stocked. The chief stirred. Cannons. The Cliff Destroyer. The thing that made the shaman elder's knees wobble. I stood tall and addressed the room. I'm going to rescue Bloodclaw's people. Anyone with guts brings their warriors and joins me. Pause. Anyone who doesn't, I won't force you. But the Eastern Wasteland Alliance has no room for cowards. That one stung. You could see it hit every chief like a slap. While folk would rather eat glass than be called cowards. The shaman elder's staff slammed the floor. 500 White Wolf warriors march with the Alliance leader. Iron Bone laughed so loud the windows rattled, pounding his chest plate. 500 Black Wolf riders have been itching for this. Snake Tattoo hesitated for one painful second, then gritted his teeth. 300 Red Snake warriors. We're in. The rest followed like dominoes. Nobody wanted to be the last coward standing. Final count, roughly 2,000 fighters. Barely matching barbarian numbers, and half of them were wild folk with mismatched gear. But we had 8 cannons and the element of surprise. We leave before sunset, I announced. Then I turned to Iron Bone. Chief, don't bring your riders to Greystone. Ride ahead and harass the barbarian perimeter. Slow down their assault on Blood Claw. Buy us time. Iron Bone flashed his white teeth. My wolf cubs were born for this. By noon, the gates of Greystone opened wide. I rode out first. Light armor, black warhorse, 200 Greystone cavalry behind me in polished steel. Behind us, 8 field cannons bouncing on custom wagons, for gunners walking beside each one. Then the White Wolf warriors, the Red Snake fighters, and the rest of the tribal coalition. We looked like a fantasy parade organized by a lunatic. Matching armor next to wolf pelts next to snake tattoos. Steel swords beside bone clubs. Cannons next to guys on horses with no saddles. But every single wild folk warrior had fire in their eyes. Blood Claw's disaster made this real. No more abstract threats. The barbarians were here, and they were eating people alive. Meanwhile, at Broken Blade Valley, absolute nightmare. The barbarian camp stretched for miles, campfires glowing in the dark like red demon eyes. Blood Claw's surviving warriors were cornered at the bottom of the valley, listening to barbarian laughter and war drums echoing off the canyon walls. Real encouraging ambience. Blood Claw himself was slumped against a boulder, left arm slashed to the bone, blood soaking half his body. His eyes burned with rage and regret in roughly equal portions. Chief, we can't hold much longer. A warrior collapsed at his feet, voice destroyed. Blood Claw clenched his jaw. This is my fault. I underestimated them. Yeah, you think? Then, noise from outside the valley. Barbarian horns suddenly blaring. War drums losing their rhythm. Chaos. What's happening? Blood Claw dragged himself upright. A warrior scrambled to high ground and screamed. Black Wolf banners. Iron Bone is here. Blood Claw blinked. Then laughed bitterly. Iron Bone, coming to watch me die in person, but what he saw wasn't mockery. The Black Wolf riders were ghosting along the barbarian perimeter like phantoms, unleashing arrow storms that shredded the outer defenses. Total chaos in the enemy camp. No, Blood Claw's eyes went wide. Hope flooding back where despair had been. They're actually attacking. That's right, Blood Claw. The alliance you mocked? It's coming to save your ungrateful behind. With cannons. You're welcome. On the march, I sent out every scout I had. By evening, the first batch came back with the kind of news that makes your stomach do gymnastics. My lord, Iron Bone's wolf riders clashed with barbarian scouts outside Broken Blade Valley. The barbarian main force is definitely besieging Blood Claw, but they've got at least 500 warriors posted as a perimeter guard. I frowned. How's Blood Claw holding up? Still alive, but barely. The barbarians lit the valley entrance on fire with flame arrows. Blood Claw's people are trapped inside like sardines in a burning can. The shaman elder slammed his staff. We must hurry. I raised my hand. No, that's exactly what they want. Everyone stared at me like I'd suggested we surrender. Think about it, I said, turning to the scout. What's the valley terrain? He sketched a quick diagram in the dirt. 3 sides, mountains. 1 entrance, east side, currently stuffed with barbarians. Narrow interior, terrible for cavalry. Let me just say, Blood Claw had cavalry against infantry, and somehow got himself trapped in a dead-end valley with no exit. This man had horses. Horses. Against enemies who walk everywhere. He could have just ridden away. At any point. But no. He charged into a geological mousetrap and got the door slammed behind him. Blood Claw, you absolute walnut. All forces, halt, I ordered. The shaman elder whipped around. What? People are dying in there. Which is exactly why we can't rush in blind. My finger traced the map. The barbarians built this trap for us. They're dangling blood claw like bait. If we charge the front entrance, we're fish in a barrel. I looked up at everyone. Iron Bones riders already bought us time. Now we need a real plan. The Red Snake Chief flicked his braid impatiently. What plan? Any longer and Blood Claw's people are corpses. I ignored his drama and asked the scout. The western cliff above the valley. How tall? About 30 meters. Steep. Nearly vertical. Can people climb it? Maybe. Light-equipped elites could manage it. There's a roundabout path through the northern slopes. My eyes lit up. That's enough? I turned to the shaman elder. I need every tribal mounted archer deployed to the east for a feint attack. Make it loud. Make it dramatic. Draw all barbarian eyes that direction. The old man's cloudy eyes sparked with understanding. A pincer attack? No, I smiled. Three-sided encirclement. I drew an arc on the map. East, your riders make noise and pull the main force. West, I drag cannons up that cliff and rain hell from above. But neither of those is the real killing blow. Everyone leaned in. The real strike is Gareth. The Red Snake Chief stared at me like I was clinically insane. Drag cannons up a cliff? That slope would challenge a mountain goat, which is why we use light-equipped elites. Disassemble each cannon. Carry the parts up separately. Powder and shells in individual packs. 30 meters of elevation gives us perfect coverage of the entire valley floor. The shaman elder let out a scratchy laugh. Interesting. White wolf hunters are mountain specialists. We'll help carry. I nodded gratefully, then addressed everyone. All mounted archers launched the feint at dawn. Maximum noise. Hit and run. Don't engage directly. Sting them and pull back. Over and over. Like mosquitoes at a barbecue. Red Snake Chief licked his lips, his snake tattoo writhing in the firelight. Like a viper flicking its tongue? We're good at that. Perfect. I stood up, moonlight glinting off my armor. Bran, start disassembling the cannons immediately. Shaman Elder, pick 20 of your strongest White Wolf warriors for the carry team. When the moon hit its peak, we split into two ghosts. East side. Every tribal rider crept through the darkness toward the barbarian perimeter. West side. Yours truly, personally leading the artillery team up the most miserable goat trail in existence, hauling disassembled cannon parts like the world's worst moving day. The mountain path was a nightmare. We had to dismount and walk. Each cannon barrel needed 4 guys rotating on their shoulders. Gunpowder kegs were strapped to specialists who moved like they were carrying newborn babies made of explosives. Which, honestly, they were. Every step sent pebbles skittering downhill, and everyone held their breath, praying the barbarians below were too busy being barbarians to look up. My lord, cliff edge ahead, a scout whispered. 30 meters above the valley floor. Direct line of sight to the main barbarian camp. I crawled to a jutting rock and looked down. The moonlit valley spread below like a diorama of war. Barbarian tents packed thick around the valley entrance, campfires stretching in every direction. Deep in the valley, I could barely make out Blood Claw's sad little defensive line, almost out of arrows and rocks. Perfect position, I whispered. Assemble the cannons. 8 light field cannons lined up along the cliff edge like a firing squad from heaven. Gunners clicked parts together with practiced hands, measuring angles. White Wolf warriors tied ropes around the gun carriages to absorb recoil, because a cannon sliding off a cliff would be a very stupid way to lose our advantage. Right on cue, the east side erupted. Red Snake riders launched the first wave. Arrow storms hammering the barbarian perimeter, then vanishing into the dark like smoke. Then another tribe hit from a different angle. Then another. The barbarian camp went absolutely haywire. Horns screaming, drums losing rhythm, warriors scrambling east with their pants metaphorically on fire. And every time they chased, the riders were already gone. Hit, run, repeat. Like clockwork. Back at barbarian headquarters, their commander was having the worst night of his life. I could hear him raging from up on my cliff. He slammed a table so hard the map stones bounced. These wild folk rats. Too cowardly for a real fight. Nothing but hit and run, his aide carefully suggested. Should we send cavalry to pursue? Pursue? In the dark? Who knows where they're hiding? Double the watch. We deal with them at dawn. They piled more wood on the fires and forced exhausted warriors to stay awake. But the harassment never stopped. Every 15 minutes, arrows from nowhere, screaming, then silence. 15 more minutes, Different direction, more arrows, more screaming. All night long. By the time the eastern sky started turning gray, barbarian warriors were dead on their feet. Half of them had fallen asleep clutching their weapons, too tired to care about discipline anymore. Up on my cliff, I patted the last cannon barrel gently, like a proud father. Everything ready? Bran nodded, eyes practically glowing with excitement. All 8 cannons in position, loaded with grapeshot. Full coverage of the barbarian main camp. Grapeshot. For those unfamiliar, imagine a shotgun blast, but the shotgun is a cannon. Against a densely packed camp of exhausted, sleepy warriors. I turned to my signal runner. Tell Gareth, prepare to charge. The sun was rising. The barbarians were yawning, and 8 cannons were aimed at them from a cliff they never thought to check. Somewhere down there, Bloodclaw was wondering if he'd die today. Surprise, buddy. The cavalry's here. Well, actually the artillery is here. The cavalry comes after. A signal arrow screamed across the dawn sky. Showtime. Down at the valley entrance, Gareth grinned like a shark that just spotted a swimming pool full of fish. Finally our turn. He raised his greatsword and 100 heavy cavalry. My pride and joy, steel-plated killing machines on horseback, mounted up and formed a perfect charge line. And then my 8 cannons said good morning. Boom, 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 boom. 8 simultaneous blasts echoed through Broken Blade Valley like the world's angriest alarm clock. The barbarian main camp disappeared under a storm of grapeshot. Thousands of lead balls rained down like metallic hail on warriors who, 30 seconds ago, were sleeping. They never had a chance. Barbarians dropped in waves, screaming, scrambling, absolutely clueless about what was happening. You train your whole life to fight swords and axes, and then the sky starts spitting metal. Nothing in the Barbarian Warrior Handbook covers that. Second volley, fire. The cannons roared again. This time we targeted their archer positions. Their carefully arranged longbow formation, the thing barbarians are actually famous for, got shredded like wet paper. Half their archers died before they could even reach for a bowstring. The barbarian commander burst out of his tent looking like a man who just woke up inside a volcano. What is happening? He grabbed a blood-covered soldier. Explain. Punishment from the sky. Iron rained from above. The soldier pointed at the cliff with shaking hands. The commander looked up and finally saw 8 metal monsters breathing fire from the clifftop. His face went through about 17 emotions in 2 seconds. He never got to pick one. Because Carl was watching. My sniper captain, the same guy who couldn't hit a target without fumbling a few chapters ago, was perched on the cliff edge. I pressed to his scope, cool as winter. Wind northeast, speed 3, distance 200 meters, his spotter whispered. Target confirmed. Barbarian commander, 1A to the left. Carl controlled his breathing. His heartbeat slowed. He waited for the morning fog to shift just slightly. Crack. One clean shot. The barbarian commander's head snapped back, a hole appearing in his forehead like someone pressed a delete button. This massive, powerful, bloodline-awakened warrior stood frozen for exactly 1 second, then fell like a chopped tree. Timber. The aide didn't even have time to gasp before bullet number 2 went through his throat. Targets eliminated. Carl pulled the bolt. The shell casing clinked on the rock. That's my boy. All that embarrassing practice paid off. From fumbling idiot to angel of death. I've never been prouder. The barbarians around the fallen commander went into full meltdown. Their leader just got killed by nothing. No sword, no arrow, just a distant crack and a hole in his head. They had no concept of what just happened. Half of them probably thought it was actual divine punishment. Third volley, fire. The cannons smashed their supply wagons next. Carts full of arrows and food exploded into splinters and mud. Whatever logistics they had. Gone. Deleted. Unsubscribed. Then Gareth charged. Greystone cavalry. Charge. 100 heavy cavalry hit that camp like a freight train made of swords. The ground literally shook. Lances gleamed in the morning sun. Barbarian leather armor versus steel cavalry lances is not a fair matchup. It's not even a matchup. It's a demonstration. Iron Bones wolf riders and the tribal mounted archers poured in from the flanks, riding behind the heavy cavalry and turning every barbarian who tried to resist into a pincushion. The barbarian army, the terrifying 2,000-strong force that had seemed so invincible, completely fell apart. They'd never experienced anything like this. Death from the sky. Invisible headshots. A steel avalanche of heavy cavalry, flanking wolf riders. All at once. At dawn. After staying up all night being harassed by hit-and-run mosquito attacks. Retreat. Retreat. Surviving officers screamed, but it was way too late for that. The shaman elders' warriors had already sealed the valley exit. The old man stood at the front, white hair whipping in the wind, bone staff glowing with that creepy gem light, chanting ancient war songs while his warriors advanced like a net woven by death itself. Methodical, merciless, loose arrows. At his command, hundreds of shafts screamed into the fleeing barbarians at the valley mouth. Running men turned into porcupines. Inside the valley, Gareth's heavy cavalry had punched through the last defensive line. Barbarian heavy leather armor might as well have been cardboard. Warriors who were still shell-shocked from the cannon barrage got trampled under steel-shod hooves before their brains could reboot. I stood on my cliff, watching the whole masterpiece unfold below like the world's most violent board game. Extend cannon fire. Seal the retreat routes. Signal Blood Claw's survivors to counterattack. The signal horn echoed through the valley, long, deep, unmistakable. Down in the valley depths, Blood Claw's battered warriors peeked out from behind their pathetic barricades. They saw barbarian tents on fire. They saw our flags flying on the cliff. They heard cannons. They heard cavalry. It's the Alliance leader. The army came. Charge. These guys had been trapped for days, starving, bleeding, counting their last arrows. And now? They exploded out of cover like caged animals finally set free. Whatever energy they had left, they threw it all into one desperate countercharge from the inside. The barbarians were now getting hit from every direction. Cannons from above, heavy cavalry from the front, wolf riders from the flanks, shaman warriors blocking the exit, Bloodclaw survivors stabbing them in the back, red snake riders weaving through the chaos, picking off officers and flag bearers. Don't let a single one escape. Ironbone was riding through the battlefield like a one-man wrecking crew, his wolf riders savaging every barbarian they caught. Blood for blood, the fighting lasted until noon. When the last group of barbarians finally dropped their weapons and knelt in surrender, Broken Blade Valley looked like a scene from a horror painting. Blood, smoke, bodies everywhere. The air tasted like iron and burnt wood. I walked down from the cliff with my guards. Warriors on both sides, mine and the tribal allies, parted to make way, bowing as I passed. Not bad for a guy who's never commanded a real battle before. When I stepped into the valley floor, Bloodclaw survivors dropped to their knees. Every single one. The highest honor wild folk can show. Bloodclaw himself dragged his wrecked body toward me. One arm barely attached, blood everywhere, pride in ruins, and knelt on one knee. The same man who'd spat on my alliance a month ago now lowered his head to the dirt. Alliance leader Ron. Bloodclaw tribe pledges absolute loyalty. From this day forward, I reached down and pulled him to his feet. Remember this lesson. The Eastern Wasteland Alliance has no room for lone wolves. He nodded hard. The arrogance was completely gone from his eyes, replaced by something far more useful, respect forged in near-death experience. I looked past him at his wounded, exhausted warriors. Treat the injured first. Count our losses. Shaman Elder, please coordinate the healers. The old man tapped his staff and White Wolf medics scattered through the battlefield. Wildfolk warriors started putting out fires and collecting the dead without being asked. The machine was working. Red Snake Chief strolled over, flicking blood drops off his braids like it was hair gel. Alliance leader, what do we do with the prisoners? I turned to look at the rows of captured barbarians, bound, kneeling, wounded, but still glaring at us with defiant eyes. 2,000 barbarians attacked. Most of them were now dead or kneeling in the mud. And I directed the whole thing from a cliff with 8 cannons and a really good plan. Not bad for a kid who learned warfare from books and common sense. Not bad at all. Interrogate the officers for intel on barbarian army movements, I said, thinking it over. Regular soldiers become slaves. Anyone who resists. I didn't finish the sentence. Red Snake Chief's snake tattoo glinted in the sun as he nodded. Understood. Love a man who reads between the lines. Bran and Carl jogged over with the artillery report. All 8 cannons intact. Ammo's down by half, though. I patted both their shoulders. Incredible work. The artillery and that sniper shot changed everything today. Carl, my boy. Carl. Who started this whole journey fumbling with a rifle like a toddler with a wrench? Just headshot a barbarian commander from 200 meters through morning fog. Character development at its finest. Now let me take a moment to appreciate the bigger picture. The wild folk have been getting kicked around for nearly 1,000 years. Barbarians call them traitors. Anglo people call them bandits. Pioneer territories steal their land. And every time barbarians raid south, guess who gets hit first? The wild folk. Always. Today was the first real victory these people have ever experienced. And yeah, it was led by some Anglo kid who's technically an outsider. But standing there on that smoky battlefield, covered in dust and authority, nobody was questioning my credentials anymore. The way the wild folk warriors looked at me had changed. Not just fear or respect, actual belief. Like maybe, just maybe, this weird southern lord with his thunder tubes might actually be the real deal. Ironbone kicked a dead barbarian out of his path and laughed his gravel laugh. Alliance leader, those cannons are amazing. More useful than our tribal totems. The shaman elder's staff hit the ground like a judge's gavel. Watch your tongue. The ancestral spirits are not to be mocked. I stepped in before a theological debate erupted on a corpse-covered battlefield. The cannons are just tools. The real power is the Eastern Wasteland Alliance standing united. I swept my gaze across everyone. Today proved that when we fight together, even barbarians crumble. Inspirational speech, delivered. Crowd moved. Internal thought. Please nobody ask me to do this again. I'm exhausted. Then Bloodclaw limped forward, clutching his bleeding stomach, and dropped a bomb nobody expected. Alliance leader. My tribe has 300 people left. I beg you to take us in. All of us. Into Greystone. Every wild folk chief in earshot did a double take. Bloodclaw, the proudest, most stubborn, most wild folk honor above everything, chief in the Eastern Wasteland, was asking to be absorbed into my territory. This was like watching a cat voluntarily walk into a bathtub. I studied him carefully. The arrogance was completely erased. All I saw was a broken man who'd learned the hardest lesson possible and was smart enough not to need it taught twice. Greystone Valley's gates are open to anyone who truly pledges loyalty, I said, letting my voice echo through the valley. But understand, joining means giving up tribal independence. Unified management. Unified training. You follow my rules, zero hesitation. Bloodclaw dropped to one knee and held his blood-soaked war blade above his head. I swear on the ancestral spirits, Bloodclaw tribe becomes part of Greystone Valley. Forever. No betrayal. Ever. I took his blade. Then, with everyone watching, I snapped it in half. Gasps everywhere. Then I unsheathed my own sword and handed it to him. From today, you're Greystone's Bloodclaw Battalion. This sword represents my trust. Don't waste it. The wild folk chiefs looked at each other like they'd just witnessed a magic trick. See, in wild folk tradition, breaking someone's weapon means absolute conquest. But giving them your weapon? That's supreme trust. I basically said, I own you now, but I also respect you. In one gesture. Did I rehearse this? Maybe. Did I spend 3 hours reading wild folk customs last week specifically for moments like this? A gentleman never tells. Ironbone stroked his scarred chin. This kid's starting to act like a real wild folk war chief. The shaman elder raised his white eyebrows, his staff gem flickering with strange light. He was mumbling divination chants, probably checking if I was some kind of prophesied figure. Spoiler, I'm not. I'm just really prepared. Red Snake Chief sidled up to Carl and whispered, Your lord knows a lot about wild folk customs. Carl grinned his shark grin. Lord Ron learns everything fast. But the most important thing? He always wins. Red Snake narrowed his eyes, tattoo gleaming. Victory is the best proof. Damn right it is. As the smoke cleared and warriors started looting, collecting war materials, I climbed to a high point and surveyed the battlefield. Every detail, every cost, every gain. Ironbone came up with the numbers. Roughly 1,000 barbarians killed. Over 1,000 captured. Our casualties, under 500, mostly Bloodclaw's people from before we arrived. 1,000 barbarian warriors eliminated. Let me put this in perspective for you. The barbarian plan was actually brilliant. Trap Bloodclaw as bait. If the wild folk come to rescue, funnel their cavalry into a narrow valley where mobility is useless, then block the exit with elite swordsmen. Slaughter everyone in a box. If the wild folk don't come, it proves they're still disorganized. Then pick them off one by one and take the entire eastern wasteland. Great plan. Really. Solid strategy. They just didn't account for me. Over 1,000 mounted archers, and you don't charge in? You just sit there doing hit-and-run harassment all night? What kind of annoying nonsense is that? 100 heavy cavalry in full steel plate? Are you sure you're not the Northern Grand Duke's elite knight regiment? Cannon bombardment from a cliff? Sniper headshots on command staff? Are we even playing the same game here? I imagine the barbarian afterlife is going to be very confused when these warriors show up trying to explain how they died. Alliance leader, I spoke up, turning to Ironbone. How many bloodline warriors among the prisoners? He grinned, showing his crooked yellow teeth. 37. Tough ones. One guy took 3 arrows and still nearly strangled 2 of my warriors. Isolate them separately. 37 awakened warriors. That's 37 potential assets if I play this right. The shaman elder shuffled over, white hair dancing in the wind. Alliance leader, the barbarians won't accept this. 2 warbands going silent in the east? Their royal court will send something much worse. I gazed at the dark northern sky and let a cold smile form. That's exactly what I want. The old man blinked. If we destroy one more force like this, they'll have to ask themselves, is the eastern wasteland worth the cost? We're the junk food on the buffet table. Make us expensive enough and they'll eat somewhere else. The shaman raised his white eyebrows. You want to go on the offensive? No. They'll come to us. I traced my finger across the map to a narrow mountain pass. Iron Spine Pass, the only road connecting east and west wasteland. Any barbarian force entering the east has to pass through here. My finger pressed hard on the spot. Voice steady as steel. We don't chase them. We don't hunt them. We sit on this choke point with cannons, cavalry, and 2,000 angry wild folk, and we make every barbarian who walks through it deeply, deeply regret the decision. The beauty of defense? You pick where the fight happens, and when you pick a narrow mountain pass and you have cannons, well, let's just say I'm starting to feel sorry for the next barbarian army. Almost. Iron Spine Pass is nearly 100 meters wide. Ironbone frowned, dragging his rough finger across my map. Ambushing there won't be easy. Plus the terrain slopes west to east. Our cavalry advantage is basically useless. I smiled the smile of a man who's already 3 steps ahead. Who said anything about cavalry? I turned to Bran. How much gunpowder do we have left? Bran did quick mental math. After restocking cannon shells, enough for at least 50 large explosive devices. Perfect. I drew 2 circles on the map, one on each side of the mountain walls flanking the pass. We plant explosives here and here. When the barbarian main force walks through, we detonate. Instant landslide. Boom. No exit. Bran's eyes went full Christmas morning. You want to collapse the mountains on their escape route. We're almost entirely cavalry. They're almost entirely on foot. Once they're trapped, we use mounted archers to bleed them dry, bit by bit, hour by hour. When their morale shatters, heavy cavalry rolls in for cleanup. I traced a retreat line on the map. Only problem, tribes near the pass need to evacuate before the barbarians arrive. Ironbone, that's your job. We have 7 days. Maybe. Ironbone nodded heavily. 7 days is tight. But those small tribes are used to packing up fast. I'll handle it. I fired off orders like a machine gun. Bran, fastest riders back to Greystone Valley for every scrap of remaining gunpowder and ammo. Workshops running day and night building explosive charges. Carl, take the sniper squad ahead to Iron Spine Pass and find the best positions. If you can drop their commander in the opening seconds, we've already won half the battle. Carl grinned his hunter's grin. Understood, my lord. Their commander won't even get a chance to open his mouth. That's my headshot artist. Still riding the high from his last 2-for-1 special at Broken Blade Valley. Red Snake Chief, send your riders west to shadow the barbarian army. I need eyes on them at all times. Movement, numbers, direction, everything. Red Snake bowed, his voice slithering out smooth and creepy. Alliance leader, my riders will follow them like shadows. We'll count how many times they pee if you want. I did not need that level of detail, but I appreciate the dedication. I addressed the whole room. This battle decides whether the Eastern Wasteland survives. We don't just need to win. We need to win so badly that barbarians never look east again. Ironbone pounded his chest. My Black Wolf warriors will fight to the last man before letting barbarians through. The shaman elder thumped his staff and announced he'd perform ancestral blessing ceremonies for the warriors. Spiritual morale boost. I'll take any advantage I can get, including magical grandpa prayers. I looked at Blood Claw, who immediately straightened up like a soldier at inspection. Good boy. Fast learner. Blood Claw Battalion. Help Iron Bone evacuate the tribes, then stand by as mobile reserve. The war machine cranked into motion. Every tribe, every warrior, every cannon and powder keg moving with purpose. The wild folk were exhausted from the last battle, but their eyes were on fire. For the first time in their entire history, they'd beaten barbarians in a real fight. And now they were defending their homeland with nowhere to retreat. Motivated soldiers are dangerous soldiers. Motivated soldiers with cannons? That's a nightmare with a delivery date. Meanwhile, in the Western Wasteland, the barbarian Grand Chieftain Gordon, aka the Skull Crusher, aka the guy who killed 3 Moonlight Knights for fun, was having a bad evening. He stood on a hill, rubbing his war axe, staring east. 3 days. 2 entire warbands sent to crush some wild folk tribes. 0 contact. Not even a smoke signal. Something's wrong. His voice sounded like rocks grinding together. He turned to his aide. Send the fastest wolf riders. Trace their route. The aide knelt nervously. Maybe they chased too far, sir. Mountains could be blocking signals. Gordon's eyes went razor sharp. Blackbone and Bloodfang are not rookies who forget protocol. Go. Now, before nightfall, the scouts came back with the kind of news that ruins a warlord's whole week. They'd found Broken Blade Valley, battle damage everywhere, deliberately buried corpses, burned flags. But not a single living barbarian. Wiped out. Gordon's eyes glowed with fury. How could wild folk destroy 2 elite warbands? His tent went dead silent. Tribal chiefs stared at each other. A one-eyed old shaman tapped his bone staff. Great chieftain, this is abnormal. Wild folk have never had this kind of fighting power. Unless they've united, Gordon finished coldly. Then he roared, Bring me Terror Claw. The tent shook from his voice. Moments later, the flap was ripped open and in walked the most terrifying human being I've never had the pleasure of meeting. A mountain of scars wearing bone armor, with an actual iron claw on his right hand, ripped from the previous warband leader he'd killed with his bare hands to earn the promotion. Terror Claw reporting. He knelt, his bone armor grinding like nails on a chalkboard. Gordon's eyes burned. The Eastern Rats killed 2 of my warbands. Take 5,000 elites. Teach them fear. Terror Claw split his lips into a grin. Yellow teeth, 0 warmth. His iron claw scratched a cold line across his chest plate. Yes, great chieftain. I'll show those wild folk that defying barbarians is worse than death. He stomped out and started bellowing across the camp. Blood Wolf Warband. Iron Claw Warband. White Bear Warband. Raven Warband. Assemble. The barbarian camp erupted. Thousands of boots stomping. Weapons clanging. War drums pounding. 5,000 elite barbarian warriors. 5 warbands. Led by a psychopath with a metal claw who earned his rank by literally tearing apart his predecessor. And here's the beautiful, terrifying part. Red Snake scouts caught all of it and sent word galloping back to me at Iron Spine Pass. I stood on the heights above the pass, night wind cutting across my face, staring at the darkening horizon. Bran rushed up. My lord, 5 warbands. At least 5,000 elite warriors. 5,000. Last time was 2,000, and we barely broke even on casualties thanks to Bloodclaw being an idiot. Now they're sending 2.5 times that number, led by someone called Terror Claw. I stared into the distance. The cold in my eyes had nothing to do with the wind. 5,000 elites. They really are determined to flatten the Eastern Wasteland. But here's what Terror Claw doesn't know. He's walking into a 100-meter-wide pass with mountains rigged. To collapse behind him, 8 cannons waiting above, a sniper who doesn't miss, 2,000 furious wildfolk riders circling like wolves, and 50 homemade bombs buried in the hillside. He thinks he's coming to punish us. He's actually walking into the world's most elaborate mouse trap. Welcome to Iron Spine Pass, Terror Claw. I've been expecting you. I turned to Bran. All ambush units in position, he nodded. Carl's sniper squad is hidden on both high points flanking the pass. Camouflage so good, even birds can't spot them. Tribal evacuations? Almost done. A few remote villages still moving. Ironbone's personally covering the rear guard. Tell him, dawn tomorrow is the deadline. After that, Barbarian scouts might find their trail. Bran scribbled notes, then added, Red Snake's riders report the barbarian army has mobilized. Estimated arrival at Iron Spine Pass. 2 days. 2 days. Enough time. Barely. By the next evening, I stood on the cliff edge overlooking the pass. 100 meters wide, wind cutting my face like frozen razors. My shadow stretched behind me like an unsheathed sword. Dramatic? Sure. But I'd earned it. Bran appeared, breathing hard. All 50 explosive devices planted exactly where you specified. Waterproofed. We test detonated one on the eastern edge. Results? He pointed at a fresh pile of rubble in the distance. Better than expected. Chain reaction. Enough rockfall to completely block the pass. My mouth twitched. Good. Every detonation point must trigger simultaneously. I want apocalypse, not firecrackers. Carl personally checked every fuse line. Said if anything malfunctions, he'll eat his rifle. That almost made me laugh. Almost. I noticed Bran's bloodshot eyes and powder-dusted face. Go sleep. That's an order. He tried protesting. I shut him down. Tomorrow I needed sharp minds, not zombies. Alone again, I mentally rehearsed every detail. Every variable. Every possible disaster. War is gambling. Even perfect plans die to one stray arrow. Red Snake materialized from the shadows like a human snake, barely visible except for those predator eyes and that creepy tattoo. Barbarian Vanguard is a day and a half out. But their scouts are approaching Iron Bone's last evacuation villages. My stomach tightened slightly. Exact locations? He showed me his charcoal-marked leather map. 2 villages near the pass. Iron Bone covering the retreat personally, but elderly and children move slow. Send riders to intercept. Create false tracks leading toward the southern swamps. And do not kill any scouts. Dead scouts make the main army suspicious. Red Snake's eyes flickered with respect. He vanished into darkness. Later, in my lightless camp, Carl ducked into my tent dripping with dew. Sniper positions confirmed. 12 points, 2-man teams each, full coverage of the canyon. He tapped the map eagerly. Best spot here, western outcrop. Perfect view of the entire entrance. When their commander shows his face, don't shoot the commander first. Carl blinked. Hit flag bearers and hornblowers first. Kill communications. 5,000 men crammed in a narrow canyon, suddenly deaf and blind to orders. Panic spreads faster than death. Understanding dawned on his face. He grinned wolfishly. Brilliant. Every shot will be psychological warfare. Then Bran exploded through the tent flap, fully awake, 0 sleep accomplished. My lord. Iron Bone's message. Barbarian scouts found the last village. He ambushed them, but one escaped. I shot to my feet. Map stones scattered across the floor. The tent went silent as a tomb. Carl punched the table and swore. 1 scout. 1 single barbarian who got away. If he reaches Terror Claw's army and reports wild folk evacuations near the pass, they might suspect a trap. My entire plan, the explosives, the ambush, everything, could unravel because one guy ran faster than Iron Bone's warriors. War really is gambling. And the dice just wobbled. My face stayed calm, but my brain was running at maximum speed. The escaped scout would report to Terror Claw. Our timeline just got shortened dramatically. I marched outside. Stars overhead, but the eastern horizon glowed an ugly red. All units, battle positions. Now, barbarians attack at dawn. The camp woke like a silent beast. Warriors flowed to positions in darkness. Only faint armor clinks betraying movement. I climbed the southern high point overlooking the entire pass. Perfect view. Explosives ready, Bran whispered. Snipers ready, Carl confirmed from the shadows. Wait until every last barbarian enters the pass before detonation. Carl, flag bearers and hornblowers first. Kill their communication. Dawn approached. Then dust clouds appeared on the horizon. Terror Claw's army. 5,000 barbarians marching like a black flood, footsteps rumbling like distant thunder. Terror Claw rode at the front, iron claw gleaming, screaming about vengeance and blood and washing away shame. Real motivational speaker, that one. An older warrior cautiously mentioned the terrain looked suspicious. Possible ambush. Terror Claw laughed. Ambush. I want them to try. Forward. Crush everything. And 5,000 idiots marched straight into my trap. War flags snapping, metal clanging, boots stomping through the canyon like they owned the place. I watched from above, counting, waiting, patient as a spider. The last barbarian stepped inside the pass. My hand went up, then dropped like a guillotine blade. Brand blew the bone whistle. The canyon erupted. Carl's snipers fired simultaneously. Flag bearers dropped with bullets through throats. Horn blowers collapsed with holes in their skulls. Every visible banner fell. Instant communication blackout. Detonate. 50 explosions ripped the mountain apart. The entire pass shook like an earthquake. Boulders the size of houses crashed down from both sides, crushing everything underneath. Dust swallowed the army whole. Terror Claw's horse threw him face first into the dirt. He scrambled up just in time to watch a boulder flatten a dozen warriors, including an awakened centurion, into paste. Retreat, he screamed. Nobody heard him over the apocalypse. Their entrance was already buried under rubble. Nowhere to retreat. 5,000 warriors trapped in a stone coffin, panicking, trampling each other in blinding dust. Terror Claw spat blood and pointed east. Charge through. Kill our way into their territory. Survivors formed a desperate assault column, shields up, pushing through falling debris toward the eastern exit. Exactly what I predicted. Phase 2. Withdraw all forces. See, I could have committed everything and destroyed them right there. But that would cost me half my army. The explosives and snipers already shattered their organization. Now came the fun part. Death by 1,000 cuts. Carl's team squeezed off one final volley, dropping another dozen officers, then vanished into rock crevices like ghosts. My entire force melted into the wasteland. Every hidden path, every crack in the earth. The barbarians burst out of the pass, swinging at empty air. From my observation point, I watched through my telescope as Terror Claw raged at nothing. He's heading east. Perfect. Signal flares launched. The mounted archer harassment began. Wild folk riders appeared from behind hills, fired arrow storms, vanished. When barbarians sat down to rest, distant horns forced them back up. No sleep, no peace, no escape. Terror Claw figured out our strategy fast enough. He gathered his surviving officers, grinding his teeth. These cowardly rats won't face us directly. We must. Must what, buddy? You're trapped in open wasteland with no supplies, no retreat, exhausted troops, and 1,000 angry horsemen circling you like vultures. Welcome to MY Game. An arrow whistled past Terror Claw's cheek, drawing blood. He spun around screaming. Chase him, but the rider was already gone. Just hoofprints vanishing in the wind. Beautiful. By nightfall, Terror Claw counted heads and nearly vomited. One day of harassment cost him 1,000 men. All 4 subcommanders, dead from mystery iron balls nobody could explain. Worst of all, his warrior's eyes showed something barbarians supposedly never feel: fear. His aide whispered about retreating. Terror Claw nearly decapitated him. The pass is buried, you idiot. Unless you can fly over mountains covered in permanent snow, east is our only option. Morning came. I'll admit, Terror Claw adapted faster than expected. He reorganized into a tight defensive formation. Elites on the outside, archers and supplies in the middle, scouts everywhere. Smart. Like a walking iron turtle. I watched through my telescope from a distant hill. He's smarter than I thought. Brand scratched his head. Sure, but that turtle formation moves maybe 20 miles a day. Exactly. The wasteland is enormous. Time is on our side. I turned to Red Snake. Your preparations ready? Red Snake grinned his creepy grin. 300 bags of rotting horse manure. 20 cartloads of dead rats. All hidden near their mandatory water sources. I traced 3 blue dots on my map and stabbed each with my dagger. Red Eye Lake. Broken Bone Creek. Black Sand Spring. By sunset, every drop is contaminated. Biological warfare, medieval edition. Geneva Convention doesn't exist here, and honestly neither does mercy when 5,000 murder machines are marching toward your home. When the barbarian army reached Red Eye Lake at sunset, the scouts nearly collapsed. The entire surface was covered in bloated animal corpses, rotten fat gleaming in the light, clouds of green flies exploding upward like a living carpet. Sir, the water is completely foul. Terror Claw's face went dark as a thundercloud. Then he kicked a hesitating soldier flat on his back. Drink it. Tomorrow you'll die of dehydration anyway. He grabbed a water skin, filled it with green-brown horror water, and chugged it in front of everyone. Rotten liquid dribbled down his beard. His throat fought every swallow. The soldiers watched, then surrendered to survival. Pinching noses, they sipped the poisoned soup like medicine. Weaker ones immediately dropped to their knees vomiting. Officers whipped them back upright. By midnight, the camp sounded like a hospital ward. Nearly half the army had explosive diarrhea. Makeshift latrines overflowed. Terror Claw himself was fighting his own rebellious intestines while patrolling camp, pretending everything was fine. His aide started saying, "Sir, if the other water sources are also," before Terror Claw's iron claw closed around his throat. "Question me again, and I'll wear your guts as a necklace." Nearby soldiers watched with dead, hollow eyes. Their legendary barbarian pride was dissolving one stomach cramp at a time. From my hilltop, a kilometer away, Red Snake fidgeted beside me. "Alliance leader, can we attack now?" "They're at their weakest." "Not yet." My voice stayed flat and cold. "Fear needs time to ferment. Attack now and desperation makes them dangerous." Red Snake licked his teeth impatiently. "But they're drinking poison water, and they still have 3,000 fighters. I don't want a costly victory. I want a perfect one." Down below, Terror Claw sat alone by his fire, iron claw buried in the dirt, staring north toward home. Snow mountains, frozen rivers, people waiting for heroes who'd never return. Patience. That's my real weapon. Not cannons, not snipers. Patience. Let the wasteland do the killing for me. 3 rotating shifts of riders harassing them nonstop. Every 30 minutes, arrows from nowhere, screaming, then silence. Sleep became illegal for barbarians. By day 10, Terror Claw's army looked like zombies auditioning for a horror play. Cracked lips, sunken eyes, stumbling like drunks. Terror Claw himself hadn't slept in 10 days. His famous iron claw looked dull. The unstoppable killing machine had become a confused bear surrounded by wolves. All power, nowhere to swing. At Black Sand Spring, same story. Rotting horse corpses floating everywhere. Terror Claw forced everyone to drink poison water again. Soldiers knelt by the spring, hands shaking, gagging down green liquid like it was their execution sentence. Then my riders attacked mid-drink. Arrows rained from the dunes. Barbarians scrambled to form lines, but their bodies were finished. They moved like old men. One arrow caught Terror Claw's shoulder. His aide screamed about retreating. "Retreat where?" he roared back. My riders never charged, just circled and shot, hunting exhausted animals. Finally, one barbarian cracked, dropped his weapon, fell to his knees, screaming surrender. The collapse spread like disease. Dozens followed. Hundreds. I lowered my telescope and smiled coldly. "It's over." Red Snake begged to charge immediately. I made the archers fire 3 more volleys first. When I was absolutely certain their spirit was shattered, I mounted up. Full advance. Kill resistors only. Bind everyone who surrenders. The Alliance army surged forward like a tidal wave. Terror Claw stumbled backward, iron claw hanging limp. The legendary barbarian warlord looked like a defanged tiger. His last guards formed a wall around him. He screamed, "I'd rather die fighting," and charged my warriors with his claw raised. Gareth intercepted him. One greatsword blocked the iron claw with a metallic screech. "Barbarian, surrender and keep your body intact." Terror Claw swung again. Gareth blocked it like swatting a fly. The once terrifying claw was pathetically weak now. "Your tactics were cowardly," Terror Claw wheezed. Gareth snorted. "War cares about results, not style." One thunderous sword strike shattered the iron claw completely. Terror Claw stared at his destroyed weapon, then did something I genuinely didn't expect. He ripped off his armor, stood bare-chested, and demanded an honor duel. Gareth actually respected that. He activated Giant Form. Terror Claw activated Blood Fury. Then 2 superhuman monsters beat the absolute stuffing out of each other with bare fists. The highlights: Terror Claw actually lifted Giant Form Gareth and nearly body-slammed him. Gareth punched Terror Claw so hard, he flew several meters. Terror Claw broke 3 ribs and responded by biting a chunk out of Gareth's shoulder. Gareth grabbed Terror Claw's head and repeatedly smashed it into the ground until the barbarian passed out. But even unconscious, his teeth wouldn't release Gareth's arm. Most metal fist fight I've ever witnessed. Literally. Gareth stood over the unconscious Terror Claw, bleeding from dozens of wounds, breathing like a broken bellows. Then he said something that surprised everyone. "Treat his wounds. He's a real warrior, and that's why I love Uncle Gareth." Brutal enough to smash your face in, honorable enough to save you afterward. The perfect employee. My soldiers tied up the unconscious Terror Claw while Red Snake sneered about killing him. I shut that down fast. Want the entire barbarian main army, tens of thousands, turning around to crush us? I patted his shoulder. Eyes on the prize. We want barbarians to calculate whether attacking the east is worth the cost. I had them give Terror Claw's aide a horse, clean water, and food. Then I walked up to the trembling man and said flatly, "Tell your king I don't want war. But the eastern wasteland isn't a free buffet. If barbarians step here again," I pointed at Terror Claw in chains. "That's what happens." He gulped clean water like a man reborn, stammered a promise to deliver the message, and Red Snake kicked his horses, but to send him galloping north. Elegant diplomacy. The scoreboard was ridiculous. 2 battles, 3,000 barbarians killed, for 1,000 captured. Our losses? Around 500, mostly Blood Claw's earlier disaster. An absolute miracle by any military standard. Red Snake stared at the prisoner columns, then suddenly raised his spear and screamed, "King of the wild folk!" The battlefield erupted. Thousands of warriors chanting, "Ron! King! King of the wild folk!" Weapons raised, voices shaking the earth. Even barbarian prisoners looked up in terror at the figures standing on the sand dune. Me. They meant me. I stayed quiet, watching every face. My brain was calculating, not celebrating. King? Tempting. But declaring myself wild folk king while the Anglo kingdom still functioned would paint a massive target on my back. Lucky for me, barbarians were currently keeping the kingdom's attention locked on Northern Wind Fortress. Nobody was watching the east. I could play the uncrowned king for now. All the power, none of the political risk. I raised my hand. Instant silence. Thousands of eyes locked on me. We won because we fought like wolves, together. Not because of me. I let that land. But the barbarian main army is still at the fortress. They will come for us eventually. Celebrating now is premature. I turned to Terror Claw, now conscious and glaring. "Will your king avenge you?" He spat blood. "The sons of frost will burn you rats alive." I laughed and faced my army. Hear that? They still think we're helpless prey. Angry roars shook the ground. I drew my sword, pointed north. Let them come. The 36 eastern tribes are no longer scattered sand. Anyone who invades pays in blood. The cheering became deafening. Chiefs exchanged meaningful looks. They understood. Not kingship yet, but absolute unity. That night, all 36 tribal leaders gathered in my tent. I laid out the situation. Barbarian main force numbered 100,000 warriors, plus 300,000 civilians migrating south. Terrifying numbers. My proposal: a permanent standing army, 1,000 warriors rotating from all tribes every 6 months. Border outposts, early warning systems, unified training and tactics. The shaman elder worried about wildfolk independence. I'd anticipated that. Small force, rotating service, rewards for excellence. Then I revealed crates of captured barbarian weapons and armor. Eyes went wide. Greed is a wonderful motivator. Bloodclaw asked what happens if barbarians never return. 3 purposes, I told them. Bandit clearance, tribal dispute resolution, and third, the real plan. I tapped the map where the Anglo kingdom sat. When barbarians and Anglo destroy each other, that's when the eastern wasteland rises. Stunned silence. Then one old chief stammered, "You mean? Attack Anglo." Every jaw in the tent dropped. Their alliance leader wasn't just playing defense. He was planning an empire. "Stop thinking about killing everyone," I corrected the old chief. I said trade. When the kingdom collapses, everything goes short. Grain, iron, medicine. And what does the eastern wasteland produce? War horses, furs, livestock. We don't need swords. We need a marketplace. The shaman elder raised the obvious objection. Every time wild folk tried trading with Anglo people, they got treated like animals. The tent murmured with bitter agreement. I poured the old man a cup of mare's milk wine personally. "You're right. But when Anglo faces barbarian armies and internal rebellion simultaneously, do you think they'll care whether their trading partner is civilized enough?" I faced everyone. Survival erases prejudice. When their granaries burn and their blacksmiths die, our horses become lifelines. Plus, I added casually, I'm technically an Anglo pioneer baron. Worthless title in the capital, but on the border? It opens doors. I didn't mention I was formerly a Blackrock. Save that card for later. The mood shifted fast. Chiefs started whispering excitedly. They'd always had horses and furs, but could only smuggle tiny amounts across borders. Stable trade routes meant everything. Red Snake slammed the table. My tribe sends 200 warriors to the standing army. First, Black Wolf and White Wolf followed instantly. Once 3 major tribes agreed, smaller ones fell in line like dominoes. 1,000 permanent soldiers assembled, not counting my own Greystone forces, which stayed separate. Always keep your personal army independent. Leadership 101. I raised my cup. To the Eastern Wasteland's future. To the east, 36 chiefs roared so loud the tent nearly collapsed. Meanwhile, 7 days later, somewhere at Northern Wind Fortress, Gordon the Skull Crusher smashed his helmet into the ground so hard it dented. Terror Claw, that useless garbage. His roar echoed through the stone command tent. 15 barbarian chieftains sat frozen. The supreme warlord was volcanic. Massive iron-armored frame, lion-mane gray hair, that horrible scar across his left eye pulsing red with rage. The Frost Wolf Elder tried calming him down. Our main force is intact. The fortress is weakening. Weakening? We've besieged it 2 months. Anglu cowards hide behind walls while my warriors bleed. Gordon wanted blood. Eastern Wasteland blood. Revenge for the humiliation. Then the tent flap opened and silence fell like a hammer. The Grand Shaman walked in. Snowwolf cloak, rune-carved bone staff, each step making torchlight flicker. Every chieftain bowed. Even Gordon went quiet. You've lost 7,000 warriors to rats, the Grand Shaman said coldly. And you want to send more? Gordon knelt reluctantly. The Grand Shaman's message was brutal but logical. The goal was the fortress and ancestral lands beyond it, not some wasteland sideshow. Wasting troops on Eastern revenge was strategic suicide. Then the Grand Shaman dropped the real bombshell. Send envoys to me. Offer gold and jewels for the prisoners. Acknowledge the Eastern Wasteland's new power. Gordon nearly exploded. That's admitting those rats matter. It's ensuring they don't stab us from behind while we storm the fortress, you fool. The Grand Shaman produced a mammoth ivory wolf pendant covered in ancient runes. Give this to their shaman. They'll understand its weight. Gordon swallowed his pride and accepted it. So let me get this straight. The most feared barbarian army on the continent just decided I'm too expensive to fight. They're sending me tribute, asking me for peace. Trading gold for prisoners I captured using gunpowder, snipers, rotten horse manure, and zero sleep. Not bad for an Eastern Wasteland rat. The barbarian envoy showed up after 3 days of riding. A young guy named Silver Frost, son of the Frost Wolf Elder, wearing the Grand Shaman's mammoth ivory wolf pendant like it was the most important necklace in existence. Red Snake intercepted him immediately with his usual warm hospitality. What are barbarian dogs doing in our wasteland? Looking to die? Silver Frost kept his cool, claimed peaceful intentions, and held up the pendant. Red Snake snatched it and galloped to my tent. When the Shaman Elder saw that pendant, he nearly had a heart attack. That's the Grand Shaman's wolf spirit talisman. A sacred artifact for communicating with ancestral spirits. His hands actually trembled. Apparently refusing this thing would be considered spitting on every dead barbarian ancestor simultaneously. Heavy diplomatic artillery. I held it. Weirdly cold. Interesting. They're more desperate for those prisoners than I thought, I muttered, then told Red Snake to bring the envoy in. Silver Frost walked in expecting some grizzled warlord. Instead he got me, young enough to be his little brother, but with eyes that made him visibly uncomfortable. Good. He knelt. Respected Lord of the Eastern Wasteland, greetings from the Grand Shaman and Great Chieftain Gordon. We wish to ransom 4,000 captured warriors. Gold and jewels offered, whispers everywhere. 4,000 ransoms meant serious money. I let him sweat before responding. Tempting. But those prisoners make excellent farmhands. Why would I trade free labor? Silver Frost countered smoothly. 4,000 extra mouths in a barren wasteland is expensive. We offer 2 gold coins per warrior, 8,000 gold coins total. The tent gasped collectively. That equaled 30 years of wildfolk income. I didn't blink. 2 coins. That's insulting. Slave merchants in Anglu would pay more. His face twitched. Name your price. 5 gold coins each. Dead silence. 20,000 gold coins. Basically everything the barbarians had looted from the western wasteland combined. Silver Frost went white. Impossible. You're mocking our sincerity. I leaned forward, voice dropping to ice temperature. Mocking? Your 7,000 soldiers came here planning genocide. Now you're offended by pricing. Then I played my real card. Think carefully. 80,000 wild folk can mobilize for total war. Maybe we can't destroy you, but we'll wound you badly enough for Anglu to counterattack. Suddenly you're fighting two fronts. The fortress becomes unreachable. Silver Frost looked like he'd swallowed poison. He hadn't expected me to understand barbarian grand strategy this thoroughly. I stood up, towering over him psychologically. But since I respect your grand shaman, 3 gold coins per warrior, plus 1 healthy Anglu farmer for each prisoner returned. Confused silence from everyone. The wildfolk chiefs had no idea why I wanted farmers. Silver Frost blinked. 1 barbarian warrior for 3 coins and 1 Anglo peasant. Correct. Healthy ones. Ones who can actually work. Why do you want farmers? I smiled mysteriously. Not your concern. Those captives are useless mouths for you anyway, right? Everybody wins. He couldn't decide. I must consult the Grand Shaman and Gordon, naturally. You have 10 days. After that, I let the threat hang unfinished. His face flickered with anxiety before smoothing over. I'll deliver your terms exactly. 12,000 gold coins plus 4,000 trained farmers. The gold funds my military. The farmers transform my wasteland into productive farmland. The barbarians get warriors back for their fortress siege. Everyone walks away thinking they won. Except I actually won. But nobody needs to know that yet. The moment Silver Frost left, the tent erupted. Ironbone jumped up first. Why trade prisoners for farmers? Those soft Anglo peasants are useless. More gold coins would be better. I smiled and asked everyone. What does the eastern wasteland need most? The shaman elder stroked his beard thoughtfully. We have horses, furs, medicine. We lack people who can farm. Exactly. I walked to the map. Our land is poor, but farmable. 4,000 farmers means 40,000 acres. That's 4 million pounds of grain annually. Enough to feed 80,000 wild folk forever. I let that sink in. Gold coins can't fill stomachs. You'd have to cross mountains just to spend them. Without food independence, Anglu controls us permanently. Dead silence. Red Snake scratched his head muttering about grain mountains. The shaman elder's eyes lit up like stars. Then Ironbone raised the obvious concern. Would Anglo farmers cooperate with savages? I pointed at myself. I'm an Anglo pioneer baron. I have legal authority over them. Problem solved. Then I dropped my real bombshell. Also, the 12,000 gold coins. I'm keeping none. All distributed among the tribes by contribution. The tent exploded. Chiefs stared at me like I'd announced free money from heaven. Which, technically, I had. Red Snake's voice actually cracked with excitement. You're giving us all the gold, every coin. You earned it. Ironbone slapped his thigh so hard it echoed. Black Wolf supports. Everyone else followed instantly. Amazing how generous becomes unanimous. The shaman elder studied me with knowing eyes. Will the barbarians accept these terms? They must. Those 4,000 veterans are irreplaceable. Without them, their fortress siege weakens dramatically. Meanwhile, in barbarian territory, Silver Frost was delivering my demands face down on the ground. Gordon crushed his bone cup into powder. 3 coins plus farmers? That brat. Silver Frost mentioned my 10-day deadline and my threat about selling prisoners to Anglo slave merchants. Pure bluff on my part. I'd never sell perfectly good labor, but they didn't know that. Gordon wanted war. The Grand Shaman wanted brains. Brains won. Gold can be stolen again. Farmers can be captured again. But veteran warriors are priceless. Accept his terms. Then the Grand Shaman added a request. Open trade with the Eastern Wasteland, including horses. Silver Frost rode back to my camp. Trade? Sure. Horses? Absolutely not. Think about it. How did I destroy 5,000 barbarian elites? By exploiting their complete lack of cavalry. My mounted archers ran circles around their infantry for 10 days straight. If barbarians suddenly got horses and built cavalry, guess who dies first? Me. Horses are non-negotiable, I said flatly. I'll trade cattle, sheep, and furs for your iron, ore, and precious metals. Silver Frost tried the sad angle. Without horses we can't herd efficiently. Not my problem. I cut him off without blinking. But I'll offer another deal, 1 Anglo farmer for 2 sheep. You've got plenty of captive farmers from the Western territories, right? More farmers for me, fewer useless mouths for them. Everyone benefits. Especially me. Always especially me. Silver Frost tried haggling. One farmer is worth 5 sheep minimum. I laughed coldly. That's Anglo pricing. Those farmers are dead weight for you. Sheep solve your famine today. I stood over him. Final offer. Accept, and we sign in blood. Refuse, and you get 0 prisoners back. His fists went white with rage, but his head dropped. I need to consult. No need. A cloaked figure beside him suddenly spoke. The hood came off, revealing a tattooed, ancient face. The Grand Shaman himself had been sitting in my tent this whole time, disguised as a random bodyguard. My wild folk warriors grabbed their weapons. I waved them down, keeping my face perfectly calm despite my brain screaming. Grand Shaman, what an unexpected honor. Those cloudy eyes held terrifying intelligence. Your wisdom surprises me, young lord. I'd hoped to trade Anglo captives for Eastern horses. You refused wisely. Wild folk don't dig their own graves. I replied evenly. Though we practice sky burial, long silence. Then he nodded. I accept everything. Farmers, gold, iron for livestock. All of it. We signed the contract on sheepskin, written in Anglo script deliberately. When the Grand Shaman noticed, I explained it ensured Anglo Kingdom would recognize the document's legality regarding their citizens. He understood immediately. I was preparing legal groundwork for future dealings regardless of who won the war. Smart old man caught my implication that I didn't believe barbarians would ultimately succeed. Clever little wolf cub, he muttered, then stamped his bone seal beside my bronze eagle crest. 3 days later at Iron Spine Pass, autumn wind whipping dead grass around, the exchange happened. Silver Frost delivered the goods for 1,321 Anglo farmers, ragged, wounded, hollow-eyed, plus 12,000 gold coins. I sent Red Snake to verify, while lines of disarmed barbarian prisoners marched out from our side. Gordon himself showed up riding a giant war bear. Because apparently horses aren't dramatic enough for supreme warlords. He glared down at me, growling about tricks. Every prisoner accounted for, I assured him. The exchange took all day. Then Gordon roared. 37 are missing. Silver Frost shot me a panicked look. I stayed completely calm. Their wounds were too severe. They didn't survive. I clapped my hands and soldiers brought out 37 bone ash urns. We cremated them following barbarian funeral customs. Gordon's expression wavered between fury and something unexpected, grudging respect. Then I clapped again. Dozens of ox carts rolled forward carrying nearly 3,000 urns. Almost every barbarian killed on Eastern soil, collected and cremated properly. This was all we could recover, I said simply. Complete silence fell over both armies. Barbarian warriors received the urns with trembling hands, placing each one carefully on the carts. Even the horses went quiet. The Grand Shaman approached me, those ancient eyes glistening. This kindness, the tribes will remember. Warriors deserve respect, I said, regardless of which side they fought for. Gordon stared at me from his bear for a long moment. You understand honor better than expected, boy. But next battlefield? No mercy, I smiled. Likewise, great chieftain. Sunset painted everything gold as both armies withdrew. My new farmers trudged eastward toward their strange new home. The barbarians carried their dead westward toward the grass sea. Was returning those ashes strategically necessary? No. It cost me nothing and bought me something money can't, reputation. When future negotiations happen, they'll remember the young lord who respected their dead. That memory is worth more than 1,000 gold coins. Greystone Valley just went from 2,000 people to over 6,000 overnight. Triple the population. Triple the headaches. Thankfully, I'd put the barbarian prisoners to work building shelters before the exchange. They resisted at first. Big surprise. But sleeping outside in autumn cold changed their attitude real fast. Amazing how weather defeats stubbornness. I'd also been stockpiling grain for weeks. Tight supplies, but enough to survive autumn. Already sent word to Earl Blackrock for emergency food shipments through Grey Wolf Pass. Money solves most problems, and money I have. That night, thousands of campfires dotted the valley. New farmers huddled in grass huts looking terrified and lost. I stood on the overlook watching this sea of desperate humanity that now depended on me. No pressure. Morris arrived with numbers. 4,321 people. About 2,800 are working-age men. Rest are women, children, elderly, better than expected. Any craftsmen, 30-odd blacksmiths, some carpenters, and leather workers. Also, Morris hesitated. Several claim to be pioneer lords. They say they know you. My eyebrow went up. Bring them. Minutes later, ragged men stood before me. One looked up, recognized my face, and nearly tackled me. Ron, it's me. Barton from Greywood. Guards blocked him. I studied the filthy scarecrow and memory clicked. Barton, one of several pioneer lords I'd befriended months ago near Northern Wind Fortress. We'd even formed a commercial alliance together. Barton Greywood? I waved the guards aside. Yes. Thank the gods you remember. Behind him stood Evans from Iron Oak and Horn from Creek Valley. Former allies, now refugees. How did barbarians capture you? I asked. Didn't you reach the fortress? Barton's eyes burned with rage. We ran the moment we heard about the invasion. But that fortress governor closed the gates before we arrived. We begged, screamed. They watched from the walls and did nothing. Calvin continued quietly. Barbarians caught everyone. They separated nobles from commoners. Every day they executed 10 nobles outside the fortress, demanding surrender. The fourth prince never flinched. Not once. Until every single noble was dead, Horn smiled bitterly. We survived by disguising ourselves as peasants. The fourth prince watched allied nobles get butchered daily and didn't blink. Filed that under. Reasons I trust royalty exactly 0%. I ordered hot baths, clean clothes, and a proper meal. Walking them toward the castle, they gawked at my defenses and organized camps with disbelief. Your territory is untouched, Evans stammered. The barbarians didn't attack here. They came. We sent them back, their jaws practically detached. They'd experienced barbarian power firsthand and couldn't comprehend someone actually winning. Inside the castle, warm food nearly made them cry. They stared at me like starving puppies until I said, eat. Noble table manners evaporated instantly. Pure survival eating. After they'd calmed down, I asked about their plans. Barton laughed hollowly. Plans? My territory is ashes. My family abandoned me years ago. I literally have nowhere to exist. Same from Evans and Horn. Former ambitious lords reduced to nothing. Stay here, I offered simply. Help me manage 4,000 new farmers. You know how to organize people. Evans perked up hopefully. As your vassals? Vassals? Already? These guys hadn't lifted one finger for Greystone and wanted knighthood? Morris and Carl built this place from dirt with their bare hands. No. Advisors. You help manage farmers. I provide shelter and food. Prove yourselves first. Fair deal. Everyone starts at the bottom in my territory, even former lords. Barton and the others looked disappointed about the no vassalage thing, but they were smart enough to understand beggars can't demand crowns. Having a roof and food in a war zone is already winning the lottery. I sweetened the deal slightly. Prove yourselves, and knighthood isn't impossible. Greystone rewards results. Hope reignited in their eyes instantly. Evans pledged first, fist to chest. Barton and Horn followed. They knew attaching themselves to a strong lord during chaos was survival strategy number one. I told them Morris would assign duties and emphasized treating the rescued farmers gently. These people survived barbarian captivity. They needed kindness, not more shouting. After they left, Carl emerged from the shadows like my personal paranoia ghost. Do you actually trust them? Instead of answering, I asked what Greystone needed most. He guessed food, weapons. Wrong. Order. 6,000 people need systems, food distribution, security, work assignments. Without structure, everything collapses within weeks. Carl understood. Former lords know administration. Morris is brilliant but came from common stock. He lacks noble governance experience. These guys fill that gap perfectly. Useful tools earn their keep. Meanwhile, hundreds of miles away at Northern Wind Fortress, a very different conversation was happening. I learned the details later through intelligence reports, and honestly, better than any theater performance. The fourth prince, Leon Dragonspeak, got slapped across the face by his own grandfather, the Northern Duke. Full open palm, leave a handprint slap. Apparently the Duke was furious about Leon sealing the fortress gates and letting every pioneer lord outside get butchered by barbarians. Leon protested he'd defended the fortress successfully. The Duke called him a wild dog born from dragons and wolves. Ouch. Then explained that kingdoms aren't just walls. their trust. Every noble watching saw a prince who abandons allies. Every commoner saw a ruler not worth following. Strategic survival, political suicide. Leon got thrown out of the study like garbage. What happened next was genuinely disturbing. Alone in his room, Leon started spiraling. Punched a mirror. Bled everywhere. Started cutting his own palm with broken glass while mumbling about how cowards become tyrants and tyrants outlive good kings. His bodyguard Carter rushed in and bandaged him up. Leon tested Carter's loyalty by asking if he'd kill on command. Carter said yes. Then Leon asked, "Even my grandfather?" Carter wisely dodged by saying he'd only obey clear-headed orders, not rage-fueled ones. Leon called him a loyal dog. Charming fellow. So basically, while I was building an alliance, developing agriculture, and negotiating peace treaties, the guy supposedly defending the kingdom's northern border was having a complete psychological breakdown and fantasizing about murdering his own family. This is the man the kingdom trusts with its most important fortress. This is the prince who wants the throne. And people wonder why I prefer operating independently in the wasteland. At least MY problems are straightforward: barbarians, bandits, and food shortages. Crazy princes with mirror-smashing habits and grandfather murder fantasies? That's a level of dysfunction I'm happy watching from very, very far away. I learned about all this through intelligence reports later, and honestly, it read like a trashy political thriller written by a drunk bard. So the barbarians were struggling. After getting their teeth kicked in by yours truly in the east, they'd signed our trade deal. But 3,000 more tribespeople kept arriving from the frozen north. Mouths to feed, not enough food. Their grand shaman, Turek, stood outside his tent doing the ancient barbarian tradition of staring at problems and frowning. Gordon wanted to storm Northern Wind Fortress immediately. Turek told him to calm down, then dropped a bombshell that apparently shocked everyone in the tent. 3 years ago, he planted a spy inside the fortress. A woman named Anna from the Silver Fox clan, a shapeshifter with the bloodline ability to perfectly copy anyone's appearance and voice. 3 years of deep cover infiltration. While I was busy inventing rifles and trading salt, this old shaman was playing the longest espionage game in history. Respect. Terrifying, but respect. And Anna's target? Prince Leon. The emotionally unstable, mirror-punching, grandfather-hating mess currently commanding the fortress. Turek's plan wasn't to breach the walls physically. It was to make Leon destroy his own defenses from inside. Turn his paranoia and rage into a self-destruct button. Brilliant and absolutely horrifying. Here's how Anna worked. Leon's bodyguard Carter went to fetch wine from the cellar. Walking back through the corridor, he overheard 2 earls whispering about how the Northern Duke had abandoned Leon and was secretly supporting Prince Albert, Leon's older brother, for the throne instead. Except there weren't 2 earls. There was one ordinary-looking maid standing in the shadows, producing 2 completely different male voices from her mouth. Ventriloquism plus shapeshifting plus 3 years of studying fortress politics. Anna watched Carter hurry away and smiled like a cat watching a mouse deliver poison to its own nest. Carter, being the loyal dog he is, immediately reported everything to Leon, who was already teetering on the edge of sanity after Grandpa called him a wild dog. Leon's reaction was predictably catastrophic. Albert? That useless coward who hides behind women. His face twisted into something genuinely scary. Then came the question that made my blood run cold when I read the report. Carter, if my grandfather suddenly died, would the North fall into chaos? Carter froze. Knelt. Tried to deflect. Leon demanded an answer. Short-term chaos, yes. But long-term. The North needs a king with frost wolf blood. Leon smiled. The crazy kind. Everyone understands this except that stubborn old man. So let me summarize the strategic situation. Barbarians have a shape-shifting super spy manipulating an emotionally broken prince into potentially murdering his own grandfather, the only competent military leader defending the kingdom's northern border. If the Duke dies, the fortress command structure collapses. Barbarians walk through the front door. Kingdom falls. Everyone dies. And I'm sitting in my wasteland counting sheep and training farmers, completely unaware that civilization's survival depends on one crazy prince not killing his grandpa. Sometimes ignorance really is bliss. I pieced this together from reports afterward, and it reads like a tragedy written by someone who hates happy endings. Leon went full murder mode, tapping the table like a war drum, staring at the Frost Wolf family crest, then casually asking Carter for his grandfather's complete schedule. Carter hesitated. Leon snapped, "Are you betraying me too?" Carter knelt immediately. Loyalty through terror. Healthy workplace dynamic. Leon grabbed his fancy silver sword, Frost Whisper, from the weapon rack, caressed it like a lover, and ordered Carter to deliver the Duke's itinerary by sunset. Meanwhile, a slender shadow vanished from the corridor outside. Anna, watching her puppet dance perfectly. The schedule revealed something precious. Every evening, the Duke drinks honey wine in his study. 20-year tradition started by his dead wife. Leon's reaction? How touching. Perfect for ending. He pulled out a crystal vial of Purple Widow, southern poison that kills warhorses in 3 heartbeats. Carter actually pushed back, arguing the poison was too obvious. Then conveniently produced a better alternative from his own pocket. Winter's Kiss. Untraceable. Mimics cold symptoms. 12-hour delay. Suspicious? Absolutely. A bodyguard casually carrying exotic assassination poison? But Leon was too consumed by rage to notice the manipulation. He laughed and accepted the upgrade enthusiastically. Carter handed it over with precise instructions. 3 drops in honey wine. Effects delayed 12 hours. Duke returns to bedroom. Dies in sleep. Nobody suspects the grandson who visited earlier. After Carter left, Leon stood alone at the window holding the poison. And for one flickering moment, memories surfaced, his grandfather teaching him swordplay as a child. Strict but warm. Eyes full of hope. "Why did you force me here?" he whispered, voice cracking. Almost human. Almost sympathetic. Then morning came, and the sympathy died. Next evening, Leon dressed in formal silver gray, sword at his hip, walking toward the Duke's tower with the calm confidence of someone attending a dinner party instead of committing murder. Guards blocked him. The Duke wasn't receiving visitors. Leon pulled rank with icy authority until the Duke's voice boomed from inside. "Let him in." The study was warm. Fireplace crackling, books and war trophies covering every wall. Duke Vesemir Frostwolf sat behind his massive desk. Nearly 70, spine straight as steel, silver hair glowing golden in firelight. Those sharp gray eyes, identical to Leon's, watched his grandson enter. "What's so urgent?" Leon spotted the steaming honey wine on the desk. His target. He forced a smile. "I came to apologize, grandfather. I was impulsive." The Duke raised an eyebrow. "You were right," Leon continued, voice perfectly sincere. "The North needs stability. I'll prove myself worthy of the Frostwolf name." The Duke actually smiled. "Now you sound like my grandson." He sipped his wine. "Sit. Let's talk." Leon's eyes locked onto that cup. Heart pounding. Cold sweat on his palms. The poison waited in his hidden pocket. The moment was now. But his hand wouldn't move. "You look pale," the Duke noticed. "Just nervous," Leon managed. Then the Duke pushed his own cup toward Leon. "Drink. Warm yourself. Winter's coming." Leon froze completely. Grandfather's cup. Grandfather's wine. Shared with casual warmth. If he'd already poisoned it, the old man would be dead. And standing there, holding murder in his pocket while his grandfather offered him wine. Even from my wasteland, reading this report months later, I felt the weight of that moment. I reconstructed this from multiple intelligence sources later, and every single detail made my head hurt more than the last. So Leon's sitting there with murder poison in his pocket, working up the nerve to spike Grandpa's wine. But before he even moves, the Duke suddenly goes ghost white, drops his silver cup, and honey wine splashes across the floor, bubbling with purple foam. Leon jumps up. "Grandfather?" The Duke grabs the desk, sweating, choking out. "Poison. Who?" Then he vomits black blood and collapses forward. Leon catches him instinctively. The dying Duke grabs Leon's wrist with iron fingers, stares into his grandson's identical gray eyes, and whispers, "It was you." Why? Leon's brain is short-circuiting because he didn't do it yet. His poison was still in his pocket. Someone beat him to it. Then a maid opens the door, drops her tea tray, and screams loud enough to wake the dead. "Help. The Duke's been poisoned." Prince Leon did it. Leon lunges for her, but she dodges like a professional acrobat. Because she is a professional. That's Anna, the shape-shifting barbarian spy who orchestrated this entire nightmare. She bolts down the corridor screaming accusations while Leon stands there looking extremely guilty next to his dying grandfather. The guards outside immediately point spears at Leon. Earls arrive within minutes. Count Roderick storms in swinging a battle axe, screaming, "Surrender, Kinslayer." Leon tries explaining. "It's a conspiracy. He was poisoned before I arrived." The maid, Anna, kneels sobbing, pointing at purple foam. "I saw the Duke accuse him." The old scholar tests the spilled wine. Purple widow. Southern poison. Then Roderick searches Leon and finds a crystal vial of purple liquid in his coat. Leon stares at it in horror. That's not his poison. His, Winter's Kiss, was blue. Someone swapped it. Someone planted Purple Widow on him as evidence. Everything clicks too late. Anna poisoned the wine beforehand. Anna screamed the accusation. Anna probably swapped the vials too. 3 years of infiltration, executed perfectly in 5 minutes. Proven guilty, Roderick roars. Leon gets forced to his knees. Then Carter explodes through the door with 20 royal guards in silver armor. Swords drawn, royal crests gleaming. "Release the prince. You have no authority over a royal heir." Roderick argues about murder evidence. Carter doesn't care. "I see northern nobles threatening the crown's successor." Leon, kneeling with messy silver hair and desperate eyes, gives one order: fight through. The royal guards form a wedge formation and start carving an escape route. Carter personally duels Roderick, the legendary Iron Wall of the North, and actually pushes him back with terrifying swordsmanship nobody knew he had. Then it gets supernatural. Roderick unleashes Frost Force through his axe. Carter responds by igniting his sword with white flames that freeze the air instead of heating it. Frost Flame? Roderick's eyes nearly pop out. That's an extremely rare and powerful bloodline ability. Carter, the quiet, obedient bodyguard, was hiding that the entire time. Carter smashes through Roderick's defense, freezing his axe solid, and drags Leon toward the exit. The silver guards close ranks and punch through the corridor. Leon runs, completely lost. His grandfather is dying. He's framed for murder. His bodyguard has secret superpowers. And somewhere in the fortress, a shape-shifting barbarian spy is probably smiling. The perfect trap. And the kingdom's last line of defense just cracked wide open. The intelligence reports about what happened next at Northern Wind Fortress were so insane I had to read them 3 times. Leon's running through servant tunnels screaming, "I didn't do it," while Carter just grips his sword tighter and says, "Not the time, Your Highness." Behind them, Roderick's bellowing to seal the entire fortress. Gates closing. Horns blaring. Complete lockdown. Carter makes a genius move. Drags Leon toward the royal garrison. See, the fortress belongs to the kingdom, not the north. The Duke had seized command when he arrived, but Leon's still a prince. Royal troops answer to royalty, not some regional dukes' angry earls. They burst into the western training grounds where thousands of kingdom soldiers are already assembled, alerted by the horns. Leon doesn't hesitate. "Roderick poisoned the Duke and framed me. Follow me or die here," soldiers roar. Swords drawn. 2 armies inside one fortress. Kingdom versus Northern, smash into each other across the central plaza. Absolute bloodbath. Tens of thousands of people killing each other inside their own walls, while the actual enemy camps outside. Then Carter delivers the news that made my stomach drop when I read it. "Sire, barbarian army approaching. Wall sentries are signaling 100,000 barbarians, watching the fortress light up like a bonfire." The Grand Shaman sees the chaos and nearly dances with joy. Within minutes, war horns split the sky. Gordon rides out on a giant frost wolf, because war bears apparently weren't dramatic enough, screaming about destiny and ancestor vengeance. The entire barbarian army surges forward like a black tsunami. Inside, Leon makes the worst decision in military history. Instead of stopping the internal fighting to face the invasion, he orders a breakout south. Abandon the fortress entirely. Carter protests about northern civilians. Leon snaps back. They chose this. Roderick's betrayal has consequences. Ice cold, zero mercy, completely unhinged. Kingdom troops smash through the southern gate and pour out into the night. Roderick screams to stop them, but can't. Leon's elite cavalry tears the encirclement apart like wet cloth. Leon rides into the freezing wind, feeling free. Behind him, the fortress burns. He turns to Carter with a psychopath smile. Let Roderick taste barbarian axes. When both sides destroy each other, we return. This prince just abandoned the kingdom's most critical defensive position during an invasion despite his grandfather's allies. Brilliant. Then something appears on the southern horizon that wipes the smile clean off Leon's face. Torches. Heavy cavalry. Charging directly at him. The banner? Frostwolf crest. The Duke's personal knight order. Impossible. Leon goes white. How are they here? The lead rider removes his helmet. Silver beard frosted with ice. Sharp gray eyes burning with rage identical to Leon's own. The Duke. Alive. Plot twist of the century. The old man survived the poisoning, or maybe it was planned, and his elite knights were already positioned south. Waiting. Leon ran straight from one trap into another. And somewhere in that fortress, a shape-shifting barbarian spy named Anna was probably already gone, her mission accomplished beyond anyone's wildest dreams. She didn't need to open the gates. She made the defenders destroy themselves. From my wasteland, reading all this, I poured myself the strongest drink I had. The kingdom was falling apart, and winter hadn't even started yet. When I finally got the full intelligence report about how Anna pulled this off, I genuinely had to sit down and pour myself something strong. This woman is terrifying. So Leon rides out of the fortress and runs smack into his grandfather, alive. His brain completely breaks. He watched the old man die. Purple foam, black blood, collapsing body, the whole show. Yet here's Grandpa on a horse looking absolutely furious. I only slapped you once, and you deserted with the entire royal army, the Duke thunders. Leon stammers about someone impersonating the Duke, getting poisoned, Roderick attacking him. The Duke calls it nonsense. Roderick is his most loyal commander. Then mentions he left the fortress because Earl Andre arrived badly wounded, reporting barbarian raiders in the northern heartlands. Except, the Duke found nothing at Andre's territory either. Both grandfather and grandson realized simultaneously everything was a trap, and the barbarian war horns are already echoing from the north. Back to the fortress. Now, the Duke roars. They merge armies and charge back, touching family reconciliation through mutual panic. Beautiful. Now here's Anna's masterpiece, which I reconstructed from captured barbarian intelligence officers later. The woman spent 3 years waiting for one perfect night, and she played it like a chess grandmaster. Problem 1. The Duke is a peak-level Moonlight Knight. Impossible to assassinate directly. Problem 2. Killing Leon accomplishes nothing because the Duke simply takes command. Solution: make Leon kill the Duke, causing internal chaos. Step 1. She manipulated Leon's emotions for weeks until he wanted Grandpa dead. Step 2. The same night Leon decided to commit murder, Anna disguised herself as the mortally wounded Earl Andre and died in the Duke's arms. Heartbroken, the Duke rode out with his elite knights to investigate. Because apparently a chained dog could guard the fortress, right? Step 3. Anna crawled out of her fake grave, shape-shifted into the Duke, sat in his study, drank pre-poison wine when Leon arrived, and performed the most dramatic death scene in history. Leon gets framed, fortress erupts into civil war, barbarians get their signal. 1 spy, 3 years, 5 disguises, 2 armies destroying each other from inside. After climbing out of her coffin a second time, Anna strolled through the battlefield like a ghost, casually killing anyone who noticed her with hidden sleeve blades. She reached the northern gate where her embedded agents, disguised as northern soldiers wearing secret fox badges, had already opened the doors. 100,000 barbarians poured through. The Grand Shaman arrived trembling with emotion. 1,000 years. We finally broke through that wall and touched our homeland. Anna reminded him the Duke's army was returning fast. The shaman grinned with terrifying joy. Let my children feast. Northern blood will paint this land red, just like they did to us a millennium ago. I sat in my peaceful wasteland reading this report, doing mental math on how completely doomed the kingdom was, and thought, thank God I chose the boring eastern frontier. The reports from Northern Wind Fortress read like watching a house fire from across a river. Horrifying, unstoppable, and you can't do a single thing about it. Barbarians poured through the broken northern gate like water through a cracked dam. Their flying axe formation was something I'd never encountered in my eastern campaigns. shield walls pushing forward with axe throwers behind them, turning even elite knights into pincushions. Brutal and effective. The Duke charged back with everything he had. His legendary axe, Frost Howl, carved through barbarians like butter, but 3 flying axes brought down his horse simultaneously. The old wolf rolled upright and kept killing, but even he could see the math. Endless barbarian reinforcements streaming through the gates. The 1,000-year fortress was finished. Retreat, the Duke roared, and you could hear his heart breaking through the word. Leon appeared from the side wanting to argue. The Duke grabbed his collar like a misbehaving puppy. Look around. Gates broken, enemy flooding in. Want every northern soldier dead? Leon finally saw reality. Barbarian flags on ancient walls. Bodies stacked in streets. Smoke eating the sky. More warriors still coming. He shut up. Then Roderick galloped in, blood-soaked and bewildered, seeing his supposedly dead lord very much alive. Your Grace? I saw your body. Barbarian trick. Shapeshifter impersonated me. No time for explanations. Roderick went white with rage, realizing he'd been manipulated into fighting Leon while barbarians waltzed through the front door. Beautiful plan by Anna. Horrible results for literally everyone else. The Duke split forces with cold efficiency. Roderick takes 1st Legion east, evacuating civilians. Leon's royal troops clear the southern route. Duke personally covers the retreat with his Frostwolf Knights. Then Roderick requested to stay behind instead. His logic was painfully clear. The fortress fell partly because of his actions. His reputation, his family's honor, everything was destroyed regardless of future victories. Someone had to buy time, and he'd rather die fighting than live disgraced. The Duke stared into his old friend's bloodshot eyes and saw absolute finality. He gave Roderick half his elite knights and one order. Hold 15 minutes, then withdraw. Roderick built barricades in the narrow streets. When Gordon, the Skullcrusher himself, led the barbarian charge forward, Roderick did something magnificently insane. He challenged Gordon to an honor duel. The entire battlefield paused. Honor duels are sacred tradition among barbarians, wild folk, even mountain clans. The weaker side challenges, the stronger side cannot refuse. Fight to the death. No interruptions. Roderick ripped off his bloody cloak, baring his scarred chest. Gordon, dare you face me? Every barbarian stopped mid-charge. Gordon shoved his own warriors aside, grinning like a predator. A northern coward challenges me. Roderick smiled back coldly. One old earl against the most dangerous barbarian alive. Buying minutes with his life so thousands could escape. Reading this from my quiet study, I raised my cup silently. I never met Roderick, but I recognized what he was. A man turning his greatest failure into his final act of honor. Some debts can only be paid in blood. The honor duel between Roderick and Gordon was, by every account I received, the most spectacular single combat in a generation. Gordon crashed his twin axes together overhead like a barbarian dinner bell. Everyone back. This old man's head is mine. His warriors screamed with excitement and cleared a circle in the burning ruins. Roderick waved his Frostwolf Knights away and walked into the arena alone. 2 warriors. Burning rubble. Frozen air. Gordon attacked first, twin axes spinning like helicopter blades. Roderick dodged the first, parried the second, sparks flying everywhere. Then the old earl activated his bloodline power. Frost crawled up his sword arm, ice crystals coating the blade, temperature plummeting until the air itself sparkled with frozen moisture. Gordon grinned. Frost power? Fun. He stomped the ground so hard it cracked open, dark red energy surging from the earth into his body. His special ability, Earth Force, unlimited power as long as his feet touch ground. Basically an infinite battery. Ice sword versus earth-powered axes. Every collision sent shockwaves through the battlefield. Roderick's strikes froze the ground solid. Gordon's blows got heavier each swing until the old earl's hands went numb. Roderick launched an ice spike from underground. Gordon dodged, but caught a slash across the cheek. Blood froze into red crystals instantly. Gordon went berserk, stomped the earth, shattering every ice surface, energy blazing around his body like dark fire. His axes hummed with impossible force. Roderick dumped everything into one final attack. His sword blazed blue. Temperature dropped below freezing in every direction. They collided. Ice versus earth. The explosion flattened every spectator within 10 meters. When the dust cleared, Gordon was kneeling with a bone-deep chest wound slowly healing. Roderick was flat on his back in a pool of blood, sword shattered, axe blade buried through his chest. His knights tried to rush in. "Stay back," Roderick coughed blood. "This is an honor duel." Gordon stood shakily and, for once, showed genuine respect. "Old man, you were a real warrior." Roderick turned his head south, toward where the Duke and Leon had fled. A peaceful smile crossed his weathered face. He used his last breath for one final shout, for the north, then silence. His head dropped, but his body stayed upright. Even dead, the old Earl refused to fall. Gordon raised his axes high. "The northern warrior has fallen. Now, pursue the rest." But those 15 minutes Roderick bought with his life were enough. The Duke and Leon escaped into the snow with their surviving forces. Leon looked back once at the burning fortress, gray eyes burning with cold fury, then turned his horse south and vanished into the wasteland. His path to the throne was shattered. A north constantly fighting barbarians couldn't support his political ambitions anymore. Meanwhile, the Grand Shaman stood atop the conquered fortress, white robes whipping in the wind, muttering about reclaiming everything that was stolen 1,000 years ago. Then the news reached me. "What? Northern Wind Fortress fell?" I shot to my feet so fast my chair nearly flipped. Red Snake knelt with the report. Duke and Leon escaped. Roderick dead. Fortress completely lost. Barbarian army advancing south in 3 columns. And the worst part, the barbarians took the fortress practically without fighting. Someone opened the gates from inside while kingdom troops and northern troops were busy murdering each other. I slammed my fist on the table. Wine cups bounced. Vesemir calls himself the Northern Shield? The great Frost Wolf Duke got outsmarted by a shapeshifter. Disgraceful. I wanted them to fight each other to exhaustion. Both sides weakened. That was the ideal scenario. Instead, the barbarian army walked through the front door with 0 casualties while the defenders killed themselves. The barbarians were now at full strength, rampaging south with 100,000 fresh warriors. "What about us?" I demanded. "Any barbarians heading east?" Red Snake shook his head. "Nothing toward Iron Spine Pass. They're ignoring the east entirely. 3 columns heading for northern heartland cities, of course. Rich northern territories full of grain, gold, and warm buildings versus my dusty wasteland full of angry wild folk and cannons. Easy choice for them." Red Snake hesitated. "Should we help the north? If barbarians conquer everything, we're next eventually." I laughed coldly. "Help? Oh, we'll help. Just not the kind of help they're expecting. Because in chaos, the smart player doesn't rescue the drowning man. He buys the drowning man's house while it's cheap." The intelligence from the northern front kept getting worse like a wound that refuses to heal. Eagle City, the north's last real fortress, was under siege. The Duke stood on the walls watching barbarian campfires stretch to the horizon like bloody eyes. 10 days of attacks, all repelled. But the real nightmare was the 2 barbarian flanking armies burning through the northern heartlands unopposed. His deputy, Earl Reed, delivered the news like a man reading a death sentence. Black Raven Fort fell. Survivors fled into the forest. Barbarians are looting everything. The Duke asked about Leon. 3 days overdue for reinforcing the eastern front. Reed's jaw tightened. Prince Leon reports. He's trapped by a blizzard in Eagle Claw Canyon. 5-day delay minimum. A blizzard? The Duke's voice cracked stone. He's been in the north for months, and he's scared of snow? Reed showed him the letter. The Duke nearly combusted. That wild dog. I thought seeing real blood would awaken some wolf in him. But he's still just a hyena who runs with the wind. His fist hit the battlements so hard the stone cracked. Actual cracks. In stone. This old man punches walls like I shape metal. The one bright spot. Someone named Prince Larigia, the Duke's grandchild through his disgraced son Rita, had organized a brilliant defense at Ice River Road, blocking Gordon's advance toward Frostwolf City. Burned 3 bridges, created a stalemate, gathered reinforcements until forces were evenly matched. Finally decent news, the Duke muttered. That child's always been steadier than his father. Reed carefully mentioned that Rita, the Duke's actual son, had been managing Frostwolf City well for years. The Duke shut that down instantly. He deserted a battlefield and got 300 soldiers killed. Blood doesn't equal honor. He'll never inherit. The northern aristocracy's family drama makes mine look like a children's story. At least when my family kicked me out, nobody died. The Duke sent Reed east with the 3rd Legion to block the other barbarian column, then turned his attention back to Leon, who he couldn't reach and couldn't trust. Meanwhile, at Eagle Claw City, trapped by Blizzard, Leon was lounging on a gold throne draped in furs, sipping wine from a ruby-studded goblet by a roaring fireplace. 9,000 kingdom soldiers sitting idle while the north burned. Carter suggested the Duke might get angry. Leon laughed. Let the old man and his wolf cubs die. The north is finished anyway. I won't waste my last 9,000 troops on a meaningless war. Carter tried pointing out that without northern support, Leon's throne ambitions were dead. The western and southern territories were busy defending against foreign enemies. The crown prince controlled the royal lands. The second prince had the east. Leon exploded. Enough. That old man never respected me. I'm a wild dog to him. He'll never help me. Then he calmed down with a terrifying smile. But I'm not doing nothing. I've made my own arrangements. Carter's eyes flickered. You mean Blackrock County? My blood went cold reading that line. Blackrock. That's my family's territory. Whatever Leon was planning involved the Blackrock earldom, which meant it involved people I cared about. This unhinged prince, sitting on a golden chair while his grandfather fought for survival, was scheming something that connected directly to my doorstep. I suddenly had a very bad feeling about the near future. Let me explain how this kingdom actually works, because it matters for what I'm about to do. Anglu isn't one country. It's 6 power blocks pretending to cooperate. The royal lands sit in the middle, for duchies surround them like jealous siblings. The eastern Black Tide Duchy has ships and spice money. The western Pale Cliff Duchy has mountain fortresses and silver mines. The southern Golden Grain Duchy has farmland and feeds everyone. The northern Frost Wolf Duchy has terrifying soldiers and iron. Then there's Blackrock County, my family, the forgotten coal lump in the corner. We don't have fleets, fertile plains, or silver mountains. What we have is a bloodline ability that lets us shatter fortress walls or build them. My ancestors constructed the entire Black Rock Mountain barrier protecting the kingdom from northern barbarians. Generations of blood, sweat, and supernatural masonry. Our reward? Being called the Mason family, with a sneer. The current king got scared after one lost battle and became a palace schemer. No more wars meant no more need for wall breakers. Royal marriages promised to Blackrock got downgraded to distant cousins. Centuries of loyalty repaid with contempt. My father, King Blackrock, saw through the kingdom's hypocrisy long ago. So when his ambitious exiled son showed up needing an army, he didn't hesitate. You're sure about this? Father asked, studying me calmly. I stood on our castle tower overlooking the Blackrock Mountains. I can't let barbarian attention reach the eastern wasteland. This is our best opportunity. The kingdom is rotting. For duchies only care about themselves. We've bled for them long enough. Father went quiet. His fingers tapped the obsidian armrest like a slow heartbeat. Wind threw gritty sand against the windows. How many people do you need? How many can you give? He stood, unclipped the obsidian Rock Eagle badge from his belt, the symbol commanding the Rock Eagle Knight Order, and pinned it to my armor. A hawk with ruby eyes, gleaming blood red in torchlight. Ron Greystone, Baron. I appoint you commander of the Rock Eagle Knight Order. 100 Rock Eagle Knights, Northern Relief Mission. I knelt. Yes, my liege, 100 knights sounds small. But every single one is a bloodline awakened superhuman warrior. Add squires and support troops. Nearly 3,000 soldiers total. 3 days later, Blackrock Castle's iron gates groaned open. 300 light cavalry in gray cloaks rode out first, small metal canisters swinging from their saddles. Then the 100 Rock Eagle Knights in black armor cracked like volcanic stone, glowing faintly red along every seam. Their wasteland horses were smaller than royal war horses, but could sprint across mountains like goats. Behind them marched pikemen, longbowmen, and 20 siege equipment wagons pulled by wasteland oxen, hiding new torsion catapult components under waterproof canvas. 30 engineers carrying tower shields walked between each wagon. I sat at the front on my black horse, crimson capes snapping in the wind. I raised my hand. The column halted. I turned toward Father on the castle wall. Cain Blackrock lifted the ancestral volcanic stone goblet and poured dark red wine down the wall, the oldest Blackrock blessing for departing warriors. Rock Eagle soars, the garrison captain bellowed. Talons break the dawn. 3,000 voices shook loose rocks from the cliffside. I grinned sharp as a blade, swung my arm forward, and 3,000 soldiers surged north like a black river unleashed. The eastern wasteland's safety depends on one thing: never becoming the barbarians' priority target. Once they settle into conquered northern lands, they'll eventually turn around and deal with us. My job is making sure they never get that comfortable. I couldn't save Northern Wind Fortress, but I could absolutely keep the Northern War burning forever. Officially, Blackrock County was responding to Prince Leon's plea for help by sending the Rock Eagle Night Order north. Very noble, very patriotic, very much not my actual plan. We crossed the frozen Tier River, and scouts delivered fresh battlefield updates. I stared at the sand table, watching black flags multiply across the northern hills like a disease spreading. Black Raven Fort has fallen. Barbarians advancing toward Cold Raven Pass. Prince Leon is sitting in Eagle Claw City doing absolutely nothing. Carl asked if we should join Leon. I almost laughed. No, we're going to Black Raven territory. Carl's eyes went wide. But it's already fallen. Exactly why it's perfect. Barbarians want land. They want homes. I stabbed the sand table with my finger. I'll make sure they never sleep peacefully in them. In Black Raven Fort, some barbarian young chief named Rick Frostwolf was lounging on the stolen lord's throne, sniffing the air like a dog discovering steak. Our ancestral homeland. Even the snow smells like harvest. His warriors reported all northern villages, cleaned out, and ready for tribal families to move in. Meanwhile, the real lord, Earl Desmond Black Raven, was hiding in a beech forest with 30 survivors, watching barbarians drive his people from their homes at Spearpoint. Old folks stumbling through snow, mothers clutching crying babies. Anyone who resisted got stabbed, blood blooming like red flowers on white ground. Desmond's fingers dug into tree bark until they bled. 50 years old, armor still bearing arrow scars from the fortress's fall. Those animals. Those are MY people. His scout captain held him back. 30 men against hundreds would be suicide. The barbarians were cocky. No patrols, no perimeter security. They'd conquered Black Raven and assumed the war was won. Classic overconfidence. My army moved fast along frozen tributaries. By nightfall, we'd reached our ambush position above a narrow mountain road. I stood on the ridge looking down at the perfect kill zone, moonlight stretching my shadow across jagged rocks. Scouts reported, barbarian migration convoy arriving tomorrow morning. 300 warriors escorting families, elderly, women, children packed into ox carts with bone bells jingling on their ankles. Next afternoon, the convoy appeared exactly on schedule. Ox carts loaded with possessions. Old people huddled under furs. Warriors marching casually, completely relaxed. I raised my iron gauntlet. Signal flags went up. 50 archers in white camouflage cloaks rose from snowdrifts on both sides of the canyon, bowstrings creaking in unison. Is ambushing a migration convoy cruel? Maybe. But these same people drove Desmond's civilians into the snow and murdered anyone who hesitated. War doesn't reward kindness. It rewards whoever hits hardest when the enemy isn't looking. And right now, 300 barbarian warriors were staring at 50 arrows pointed at their faces, wondering how their perfect conquest suddenly developed complications. Welcome to MY War, Rick Frostwolf. Get comfortable. Actually, don't. Fire, 50 longbows sang. Armor-piercing arrows turned 300 barbarian escorts into pincushions before they even understood what was happening. Their fancy for armor? Tissue paper. 20 warriors dropped in the first volley. The escort captain started screaming orders and caught an arrow through the throat mid-syllable. Pinned to the snow like a museum exhibit. I signaled the engineers. 10 miniature catapults. Beautiful Blackrock engineering, 1/3 normal size, full killing power, launched simultaneously. 20-pound rocks screamed into the densest part of the convoy. One ox cart exploded into splinters and body parts. Second arrow volley, fire arrows this time. Flaming streaks cut off their retreat completely. Smoke columns twisted into the frozen sky like tortured snakes. Rock Eagle Knights. Charge. 100 black-armored knights erupted from the hillside on ice-spiked horseback, using the downhill slope like a natural accelerator ramp. Beautiful, terrifying, unstoppable. Then Rick Frostwolf's sister Aisha grabbed a battle axe and leapt onto a horse, screaming a war cry that lasted exactly 1.5 seconds before Carl put a steel core bullet through her forehead from 300 paces. She dropped like a puppet with cut strings. Ice blue hair spread across red snow. Harsh. Absolutely. But she grabbed a weapon on a battlefield. That's a combatant. Every barbarian bloodline warrior who activated their rage got immediately sniped by Carl's team. Without superhuman champions, regular barbarian warriors crumbled under 100 knights thundering downhill at full speed. Don't linger. Punch through and go. 15 minutes. The entire attack lasted 15 minutes. We carved through, left behind burning wagons, scattered corpses, and deliberately wounded survivors, because injured soldiers drain more enemy resources than dead ones. I rode down to an old barbarian woman cradling Aisha's body. Through my iron mask, I said, "Be grateful we're not like you. We don't kill unarmed people. Now take your survivors to Black Raven Fort. Tell Rick Frostwolf that the Avenger awaits him." My uncle Alaric questioned leaving myself with only a few hundred light troops while sending him to capture the fortress. "Rick has 1,000 warriors. Don't question me. I destroyed 9 barbarian warbands with 3,000 men in the eastern wasteland." He shut up and rode off with the knights. Now the fun part. Rick Frostwolf saw his sister's corpse and completely lost his mind, exactly as planned. Smashed cups, screamed, grabbed his frost-glowing battle axe. "Gather everyone who can hold a weapon," his deputy mentioned fortress defense. Rick left 200 guards and took 800 warriors to hunt me personally. Because some masked stranger killing his baby sister was apparently more important than protecting a strategic fortress. 200 defenders against 100 Rock Eagle superhuman knights led by my uncle, approaching from the opposite direction. Rick was chasing me through frozen wilderness with his main force, while his fortress sat nearly unguarded behind him. I baited the angry bear out of his cave. Now someone else walks right in. Manipulation isn't about being clever. It's about understanding what makes stupid people predictable. And grief-stricken young warriors with dead sisters? Most predictable thing in the world. 800 angry barbarians charged out of Black Raven Fort like a flaming snake, shaking snow off trees with their war cries. I watched through my telescope from a stone platform, counting heads like a butcher counting livestock. "They're coming," Carl reported. "Engineers ready, 20 on each ridge. Black powder buried. Fuses set. Prepare the delayed ignition and pull everyone out. Nobody dies for a timer." I mounted up, drew my sword, and 200 light cavalry followed me downhill straight at the barbarian vanguard. Rick spotted my iron mask immediately. "That's him. For Aisha. Kill them all." We charged directly at them, then split apart like water around a rock at the last second, wheeling along both flanks. My riders turned in their saddles and fired whistling arrows. Barely lethal, maximally infuriating. "Cowards! Stand and fight," Rick screamed, chasing us like a dog chasing a car. I kept the distance perfectly calibrated. Close enough to enrage, far enough to survive. Classic fishing technique. Dangle the bait, let the fish run. Carl rode up. "Ambush point ahead," I signaled. 50 longbowmen rose from both ridge lines simultaneously, raining armor-piercing arrows into the compressed barbarian column. Front ranks collapsed instantly, arrows punching through fur armor like it was decoration. Rick laughed and swatted 2 arrows from the air with his axe. "This is your ambush?" Pathetic. His warriors raised iron-banded shields and pushed through the arrow storm like angry bulldogs. Exactly what I wanted. They were accelerating into the kill zone, but timing was slightly off. I needed them deeper. So I did something beautifully stupid. I stopped running, turned my horse, faced Rick directly. "No wonder the Frostwolf Duke's ancestors abandoned your branch 1,000 years ago. You barbarians fight like rabid dogs. All teeth, no brain." Rick's eyes went blood red. Tattoos blazing ice blue. "I'm going to shove that mask up your. Catch me first." I laughed and galloped into the valley. Rick howled, "Chase him," and 800 barbarians stampeded after me, not noticing the little red sparks burning quietly on both ridgelines. Fuses hissing, smoke curling upward. My cavalry crossed the safety line. I glanced back at the barbarian army filling the narrow canyon wall to wall. 3, 2, 1 boom. The mountain exploded. Both cliff faces cracked apart simultaneously, dumping thousands of tons of rock and snow into the canyon. An instant avalanche, manufactured to order. Barbarian warriors vanished under white thunder without time to scream. The entire canyon became a churning river of snow, stone, and death. Rick survived, barely. His axe erupted with ice-blue energy, splitting the snow wave around him like some kind of frost-powered snowplow. But his army? Buried. 800 warriors reduced to silence under frozen rubble. Coward. His scream echoed through the avalanche's dying roar, lonely and pathetic. I sat on my horse at safe distance, watching my handiwork with professional satisfaction. Pathetic, I said quietly, loud enough to carry. 200 defenders left in Black Raven Fort. Uncle Alaric approaching with 100 superhuman knights. Rick trapped in a snow-filled canyon with maybe a few dozen survivors. Checkmate in 3 moves. Uncle Alaric heard my signal arrows echo through the mountains and smiled like a wolf spotting a limping deer. He raised his fist. 100 Rock Eagle Knights and 1,000 black-armored infantry froze mid-step. Knights take the castle. Infantry split. Half inside, half clearing villages north of Tyr River. He dismounted, grabbed his signature double-bladed battle axe, and reminded everyone that only 200 old guards remained inside. Easy pickings, but never underestimate Frost Wolf's stubbornness. The charge was magnificent. 100 superhuman knights thundering toward Black Raven Fort's eastern gate like an armored avalanche. Sleepy guards barely poked their heads over the wall before arrows silenced them permanently. Then Uncle Alaric did the Blackrock family party trick. He reached toward the massive stone wall and squeezed. Solid rock rippled like water. Ancient fortified masonry twisted like warm clay under his bloodline power. One scream of effort later, he literally tore a 30-foot gap in the wall with his bare hands. Stones rained down like hail. This is why they call us the Siegebreaker family. Walls are suggestions when a Blackrock shows up. Knights poured through the breach like steel flooding a broken dam. The barbarian garrison, elderly warriors, walking wounded, second-string fighters, never stood a chance. Streets became slaughterhouses within minutes. Meanwhile, infantry swept through northern villages, dragging barbarian settlers into the snow exactly like barbarians had done to local civilians days earlier. Poetic justice served cold. Black smoke signals rose from the captured fortress. Victory confirmed. In the snow-choked valley, Rick saw the smoke and nearly swallowed his own tongue. His fortress, gone. His army, buried. His sister, dead. Everything lost because he chased a masked stranger through a canyon. "I'll hang your head on my gates," he screamed at me. "Your gates?" I called back pleasantly. "Those are my gates now." Rick ripped his shirt open, baring his scarred chest to the freezing wind. "Honor duel. By ancestral blood, I demand it." Carl immediately rode up, whispering urgently. "Don't. We've already won. This is unnecessary." "Accepted," I said, dismounting calmly. Carl wanted to argue but saw my Eastern Riders and Blackrock Longbowmen already forming the traditional dueling circle. He quietly signaled his snipers to keep crosshairs locked on Rick. Smart man. I drew my sword. The blade hummed with a sound like a dragon singing. Rick yanked his frost-glowing axe from the snow, ice-blue flames exploding around him, temperature plummeting. He launched himself at me with mountain-splitting force. I didn't move. His axe screamed toward my face. 3 inches from my iron mask, it stopped. Dead. Frozen in midair. The blade vibrating violently, shrieking with frustrated momentum. Rick's enormous arms bulged with effort, but couldn't push forward 1 more millimeter. An invisible wall of pure force held his weapon completely immobilized. What is this? Terror cracked through his rage for the first time. I smiled behind my mask. This is called the King's Command. My bloodline power, absolute dominion over metal. Your axe belongs to me now. Every piece of iron, every steel blade, every metal button within my range answers to my will. Rick brought a metal weapon to fight the one person in the world who controls metal with his mind. Brave kid. Stupid choice.